All right, welcome everybody to the 2023 Motorsports Sponsorship Summit. Today, we are filming live from Mechanicswear in Valencia. Special shout out to Michael Hale, Jesse Spungen, Sean Doffner for helping to make this happen. Look at this set, and yes, that is Dale's original car. How cool is this? I have to say, this is probably one of the coolest offices that I've ever been in, Mechanicswear's new headquarters, and I feel very blessed that we got to do it here. So Jesse, thank you. I think you're online. You're going to join us here in a second.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. And then we're going to head over to Supercross after this. So several of us will be at A1. How fun is that? Guys, today we're here to, the goal is to help racers learn what brands and companies want from sponsorships so that it helps teams, promoters, series, racers, drivers make more money from sponsorship. So the goal is for you to walk away with a better understanding of the business of sponsorships, because there is a logical process that you can do, which will help you ensure that you get a little bit more money if you understand what brands want. So we have 6 sessions, doing it a little bit different from last year. Last year we had hour-long sessions and it went pretty long. We have 6 30-minute sessions this time around. We're going to start with why do brands sponsor and how do they calculate ROI? Then we're going to go to promoting yourself and your sponsors through the media. And there's many types of media, so it's interesting. It's different from what it was just 10 years ago. We're going to talk about activating at events to increase brand value. Remember, if you can't increase sales, you can increase equity value, which raises revenue. So you can activate to create more integrity and value for a brand by giving it better reputation. We are going to talk about how to create decks that attract attention and how to write proposals that sell sponsorships. There's a difference between decks and proposals. We talk about it all the time. We'll go over it. We're going to also talk about 2 new sessions. After we do these summits, we hold reviews and assessments. And there's been a lot of requests for how do I get a tire sponsor? How do I get wheel sponsors? And also, how do I find sponsors in the first place? So we've added 2 sessions. 1, finding tire and wheel sponsors, and 2, networking. Networking is probably a big one. So before we get started, everybody knows that we've had some very unfortunate circumstances and we've lost several people in racing. And I originally wanted to do 43 seconds of silence for Ken Block for obvious reasons, but then it was brought to my attention, we lost Greg Cazzo, a very good friend of mine. We lost Robbie Pierce, another good friend of mine, and many people in the industry. So I'm going to turn this over to George for 1 second so we can take a moment and recognize our friends. George, is your mic on?
Thank you very much, Alex, for doing that. We really appreciate the motorsports community sticking together. Everybody in the motorsports industry has understood that we all stick together for the future of the sport and the future of growth in the industry. And we really, really love that all of these people understand that we're doing stuff like the summit to be able to help other people. Everybody that unfortunately has passed away, like you said, Cazzo, Ken Block, Robbie Pierce, all of those guys were very focused on making the industry a better place and really focusing on other people. So we got to commend them for that, right? They put a lot of effort and a lot of thought in everything that they did in their life. And we're going to be truly missing them. But we know that they would want us to continue on the summit and to keep progressing the industry forward. So really appreciate it. Want everybody to give their family a hug and appreciate everything going forward. And we'll have a great 2023. So back to you, Alex. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Guys, for those of you who watch the Meet the Sponsor webinars and have watched some of the other summits, you know that we just jump right in. So can we line up our first panelists? For the first session, we have why brands sponsor and how do they calculate ROI if they do. A lot of brands don't. We have Ben Dolan, Vice President of Marketing, VP Racing Fuels. David Cardy from Eibach. We're there. We got Ben up. Okay. David's National Sales Manager, Eibach Springs. We have Jackie Donahue, NGK Spark Plugs. Jackie's a new panelist. I'm looking forward to speaking with her about this because, Jackie, I'll have a question for you, see if you can answer it. And of course, Jesse Spungen, who is the president of Mechanicswear. Jesse, thank you. He's in the office next door. Thank you so much for letting us use these facilities. What a cool backdrop. There's
Thanks,
Jackie. There's Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Jackie, you're gonna have to tell me later what the B8ES stands for. It's a plug that I've been using since the 70s with my 2-strokes. The
Okay.
NGK. All right. But let's start with Jesse. Jesse, thanks for letting us use your spot here. Mechanics Wear obviously is very integrated into motorsports. As you can see with the car behind me on the wall. What is the reason a brand like a glove brand would get into racing and sponsor? Why do you do it?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. You know, racing is inherent to the brand and its DNA because it was born out of racing. We've been a company around for over 30 years. Jim Hale actually founded the company. It was a spinoff out of Axo Motorcycle Apparel. If people want to learn more about the story, you can go to our website and read about it. But you know, we've been sponsoring racers. We've been sponsoring NASCAR, NHRA, motocross, et cetera, around the world, by the way, because we're a global company. And so the product was actually invented out of a need for race mechanics to have a better experience and better hand protection. So we invented the high performance cut and sew premium category of hand protection. That's mechanics wear. A lot of people copy us, but there's only one original. And that's us in Valencia, California. So, you know, that's why we do it. It's inherent in our blood. And from there, we went into the federal tactical space. We went to the commercial industrial space. And that's why you see our gloves in movies with Mark Wahlberg, to at a job site in an oil and gas environment, right? So we're just very thankful to be here. We're also very thankful to be able to host Alex and the team. And excited that he could be in our lobby. And you're absolutely right. That's Dale Hart Jr.'s car in our wall. The other one we donated to the Peterson Museum. You know, just really happy and excited to be here. So thank you all.
And thank you for the suggestion. You know what? We may do the next summit from the Peterson Museum. How cool would that be? That might be a neat.
We'll do it right next to our other car. How about that?
That would be cool, huh? Sounds good. All right, next up, we have Jackie Donahue from NGK Spark Plugs. Jackie, how are you? Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing some insight. Back in the 70s, I had a 2-stroke motorcycle I've been riding forever, and the B8ES and then B8ES or ER for the restrictor. I've been using NGK plugs my entire motorcycle career, so thank you.
That's awesome. And I get a lot of people when I meet them, they're like, oh my gosh, they tell me stories about how they've been using them since, you know, they were little kids, and it's a great brand. I don't actually have any issues selling NGK. Our brand's very strong. But yeah, I mean, I've been in the racing and the sponsorship portion of this for 5 years. And it's, I mean, we've always been ingrained. We did a lot of motorcycle, like you said, but we kind of stepped away a little bit from that. And we've been doing some of the newer stuff. So we got really into drift this year and last year. And we obviously were involved in drag racing, but we kind of dabble in all of it, you know, tractor pulling, whatever. Everyone needs spark plugs, right? But with our new brands, with NTK sensors, and we also do ignition coils, we're really trying to push that product. And I know a lot of the racing community doesn't use all of that, but a lot of them do. So just trying to get brand awareness out on those 2 product lines.
Right on, right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And David, iBox Springs. It's pretty obvious, I guess. I think when I heard you on the ePart Trade race week, if I correct me on the numbers here, but I'm going to go by memory. I think you said 80% of motorsport sales go through California for iBox. Is that correct? That certainly would explain why iBox Springs is in racing. David, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Here I am.
How are you?
First of all, thank you for having me on here. It's a great panel, by the way. I'm actually at my kid's go-kart race right now, and actually using mechanics wear and NGK plugs right now. So
No way.
pretty cool to be part of that with this panel. But yeah, IBOC obviously we're a global brand, been around for over 70 years. We started off Wilford IBOC making race springs, and that's what we're, I guess, synonymous for. We've transitioned over the years into performance street lowering kits. Now we're heavily involved in lift kits and shocks. sway bars. We do a lot more things than just the race springs. But yeah, I would say, we race everything here in the United States. So our market is much bigger than the rest of the world. So yeah, probably 80% of the racing springs that we make come out of Corona, California. So some of the metric stuff and whatnot for the European markets come out of Germany. But yeah, we make 80% of the world's racing springs right here in California.
Right on, right on. So next up, Ben Dolan, Vice President of Marketing for VP Racing Fuels. I've known Ben for a while. He's attended a couple summits, thank you, and been on Meet the Sponsors. Ben, you once told me that some of the best parts about sponsorship are not what you plan and schedule, but it's the unplanned stuff. It's the stuff that you didn't expect. And you have a good example on Vital MX and the slow motion jump.
Yeah, we actually this year, when I was looking back at what performed the best for us as far as engagement and reach, adjusted ad value, it was actually all of our top performers were unplanned pieces. So it was a great piece of awareness for us in the data to know that as we talk here, what's really important is not the minimum things that are in the contract that we're looking for from an athlete or from a series, but it's all the other things that they do to add value that are actually the gravy that keeps us coming back year after year. So, we've been doing this for 48 years. And as you know, the last 10 years, 11 years, as we've expanded into lubricants, coolant, additives, appearance products, other consumer products, a lot of people still only know us for fuel. And so it's that ancillary stuff that helps spread the word that's really important for us.
Yeah. Right on. Awesome. Thank you. And now, last but not least, is my partner in this, the co-host, Tony Yorkman. Tony, are you there? I know he was having a good time last night at Disneyland, so he might be a little tired this morning. Where's Tony?
Oh, there we go.
That's funny. We have so many people on this
good.
call, it's hard to find you.
Yeah. Good morning. Yes, I'm a little groggy from hanging out with them. The mouse and enjoying some family time, but ready to go.
So I know Tony from K&N Filters. He used to run marketing for K&N for almost 2 decades, and he comes here with more experience, 10 times more experience than I have in motorsports and sponsorship. So as a co-host, Tony and I hope to be able to pull out from all of our panelists what we hope that you could use to learn to raise more money. And Tony, do you have any thoughts on the first set of panelists on ROI? Did K&N calculate ROI? We're going to jump into, do brands calculate ROI? How do you calculate it? And if so, or if not, how do you know if sponsorship is working? How did you know if they were working at K&N?
Well, there's definitely different ways to follow your ROI, and there's tables out there. There's pieces that will give you measurements. Say a company like a Hookit, which will actually measure your media coverage and give you more like dollar valuations on things. But K&N's biggest focus on what worked for ROI was more about the activations and the cohesiveness of what they did with either their products or their partners. Whether it was a program that supported a specific retailer of ours or a dealer of some sort, or if it was something that was more of a campaign or a push for new products or even existing products that had a re-push into the market. And it was just how we were able to put some more emphasis on, the products. But again, it became more of a one way, whether it was a consumer sales or if it was a customer sales and so on. But ROI is a tricky thing, especially in motorsports, as we've all learned, that it's really tough to do it. There's, again, services like a Hookit that help you show a little bit more. It's all relative in those ways, but it really has to go with how it's supporting your agenda, right? Alex, you've heard me say this on multiple panels that my famous quote is, always find those opportunities that fit your plan instead of building a plan around those opportunities. And I know Jesse, as my former leader, has heard me say that a number of times himself. And that's kind of one of the things that we've always followed. And so we do look for people that have opportunities that match our plans.
Mhm. Tony, real quick, are you logged in Zoom under a different name? George is looking for you. There's a lot of attendees on the call. And we're trying to
I
pin
was
you in.
having problem in the hotel with the Wi-Fi, and I I logged in the same account at the same time, so that might have caused a little bit of an issue.
All right, Tammy's going to figure it
But
out.
I should be still underneath it was the same account. I just ended up opening up another chat on my cell phone instead of the
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Wi-Fi on the
So-
laptop.
There he is. Yay. All right. So you mentioned Jesse. You used to work with Jesse. Jesse, prior to being with Mechanics, where was the president of K&N Filters. Jesse, what differences do you notice between an endemic brand, parts brand, like a filter company? Obviously, it's very endemic, very car related, automotive aftermarket, versus a glove brand where you're across many different industries, not just motorsports, but also military and a variety. How do you notice the difference in sponsorships, or is there a difference?
Well, hats off to K&N, because I think they've extended into filtration for data centers, as I saw the latest press release from them.
Wow.
So, but I think, Mechanics we're very much obviously into the entire racing industry, but we also really care a lot about the mechanics and the people working on the car, right? Think about it, right? Mechanics was born out of helping the driver actually win through the race team, through all the mechanics working on the vehicle. So I think that's a big difference. We're actually working on the car in its entirety. And then of course, K&N is helping the vehicles in specific ways around more airflow and more horsepower, et cetera. So I think, that's one unique way. And I think for me, that's an interesting concept for all the different brands and people that are looking to interact with brands, is exactly your point, Alex, right? What is the purpose of the role of the brand in the racing environment? Because they are different. I mean, that's a perfect example you just called out between K&N and Mechanics Wear, right? And it was just called out, we're at the go-kart track, and we got Mechanics Wear gloves on our hands because we want that car to go faster.
Nice. Thanks. So Ben, you and I've talked many times about sponsorships, and we've gone into this. I think my lights went out, huh? Motion sensor. There we go. And do you sponsor teams so that they will put your logo on their helmet, their race suit, and their car? Is it about the logo exposure, or why does
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we talk about
that's
that
always
a lot.
that's always our hot topic, right? Because it's no longer about brand recognition for us. We talk a lot about the buyer's journey, and what we're looking for is not awareness level content in certain markets. We're looking for consideration decision level content. So athlete, a series, someone that's sponsored, even lookalike audiences, people like Cowboy Cerrone and UFC that works with us. He's getting into racing, but he has a great lookalike audience there for our other consumer products. Creating awareness, creating content, things that help with the buyer's journey, that's beyond just a logo on a car or on a helmet or on the sleeve. That's where the value is. That's we've already talked a little bit about Hook It here. We use Hook It and other things to measure and look at the analytics on how it moves the needle, how it influences sales. So it's really about being beyond the logo on the car in most cases. In the case of some emerging markets, we still have some awareness to do. And particularly, we are a global brand, but there are certainly global markets that we need greater awareness. But certainly domestically and with most of our athletes, we're doing that to create awareness of the other things beyond fuel and beyond just the brand.
And then real quick, do you calculate ROI?
So we do, we use a few things, one of them being Hook It, of course, with looking at the adjusted ad value, but we're looking at the promotional quality score. We're looking at what are they doing that's purposeful for us. So it's a few videos that are done that we can repurpose that maybe are testimonial in style or explainer that we can use beyond. So it's helping us reach our audience. It's helping us reach an extended audience that we might not otherwise have access to. It's helping educate. It lives forever. We had hundreds of millions of views on branded video over the course of 2022. So you think about the tens of thousands of hours of watch time
Yeah.
That's really important. As the education happens, people understand how VP helps make more power. And so it's that's the value. That's the added value
Cool. Thank
for
you.
us.
That makes sense. And then Jackie, with NGK, do you calculate ROI, or what is it that you look for in teams when you go to sponsor teams? Anything specific, like if there's a driver or racer on the call right now that is looking to potentially get sponsored by NGK, what would bring them to your attention that they can do to help NGK?
So the ROI is like the kryptonite, right? I cannot never measure it. And we don't sell to consumers. So to do, trying to figure out if racers are moving the needle with sales, it's very difficult. And a lot of our racing sponsorship has been brand awareness, but I don't really need to make people aware of spark plugs, especially NGK spark plugs. We're saturated. So
Okay.
we launched a different program last year, and I have to fill the gaps. We're a small marketing team. So when racers come up like at PRI and they're like, hey, how can we help NGK? Like Ben said, it's more than the logo, right? So I need content. How can you help me make content regarding Shop Squad? So Shop Squad is a new program that we started this year that we target technicians, and it's a learning and resource program for technicians. So what can you provide to me exclusive to this group of people? And I've gotten tons of ideas. So, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like, hey, how can you help me with sensors? You guys are all using our plugs. How can we get awareness on that we make oxygen sensors, that we make 6,500 other sensors?
Wow.
How can you get information out about ignition coils? And I want them to use the product too. So it helps if they're able to use the product on their race car or their car at home or whatever, and really give that like very authentic message. So those are the things that I do. I did invest in Hook It, not exactly Hook It. And we invested in Zoom.
Okay.
But for us, I had a hard time measuring that because a lot of the folks that we sponsor, they don't have business accounts. And
okay.
I can't follow that. So for me, it was a waste of money. So I stopped using Hook It or Zoom, and I just, stopped, they do the hashtags, I follow that. But as far as like measuring some of that stuff, I was spending like $30,000 with Hook It and not really getting any good reports that I could use.
Right.
So
I think we have someone that might need to mute their microphone. You muted? Okay, George muted. Thank you, George. That makes sense, Jackie. So you don't sell to retail, you sell to retailers. Therefore,
yeah.
The brand message has to be communicated through the retailer to the end customer.
Yeah. And one really cool thing, and I don't know about the other brands on the call here on the panel, but for NGK, when a retailer goes, buys product through us, we have what we call co-op, and we take those funds, they spend X amount of dollars, they get so much money back. And we call that now marketing partnership funds. We take that money and we use that to work together for marketing. And I've been able to take that money and kind of refocus it on sponsorship. So where we haven't been able to sponsor, or if like I saw Don O'Neill here, Don O'Neill wants to come up. I'm like, oh, Don, I can't sponsor you this year, but can you help me with this retailer? And I can pull those funds and give him money for sponsorship, but then he can help me with like AutoZone. How can we drive sales to AutoZone for plugs or sensors? So there's some creative ways like that we can move money around to still do sponsorship, and it benefits, us and AutoZone or us and Advance or whoever.
Yes, all your partners. That makes sense. And then when sponsorship is a partnership, it works so much better. When there's the brand, the retailer, and then of course the brand ambassador, the team or the rider that represents the brand through the retailer. That makes a lot of sense. Let's go to David real quick. David with iBox Springs. I'm assuming that's the same thing, as you're looking more for sales and performance, and you probably have, being an endemic brand and aftermarket parts, you're looking for transfer of technology, I would assume, and where you learn from the teams how to make the parts better for retail.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a a lot going on. I always like to start with the, the macro and look at the word sponsorship and racing when we're looking for people that we're going to partner with. I actually don't like to use the word sponsorship because the definition of sponsorship is to fund someone's and a team or a person's endeavor. I don't know about you, but I got plenty of stuff I can support myself or my son. I don't need to be handing out money to people. So I like to, we like to use the word partnership.
Partnership.
Yeah. And then it's the same with racing. Racing in general, there's a big difference between Formula One and dirt track racing in Iowa. So, we really got to get a little more granular when we're looking at this. Obviously we like to track as much as we can, but there are certain forms of racing and certain groups that just is a little more untrackable. How do they make an impact in their local area? Obviously we like to sell springs everywhere across the country, and we're dealing with every form of racing. So it gets a little bit difficult to track across the board. We do the best we can with tools and whatnot to track that. But there's also, the local guy in his area could be a big influence. So, we don't like, and it's the same in reverse, a person that we're going to go after and partnership with, they should have a good knowledge of our company and vice versa. If a company, I've seen some of our competitors out there and saying, we're sponsoring, come sign up. Well, what does that say about them? They're looking for the absolute minimum probably to give you in looking for the biggest return. So, it's the same in reverse for us. Obviously, we're looking for someone we can partner with that's going to give us the best bang for the buck. So the more they know about our company, the more they know about, how they can be an influence in their area. Whatever that may be. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's maybe they're an advocate for the company and their local market or whatever the case may be. But they need to be invested in the company. You need to treat it as a partnership, and we're not just giving you money. You need to look at how you can stand out and be different. So I heard someone else say, which was actually a great piece of advice, is maybe it's not in your area. We're pretty, I wouldn't say saturated, but we're very well known in the racing world. So maybe outside of that world, you can be a bigger influence. So I thought that was a great piece of advice, and we look for the same thing. We try and venture out of our normal circles and find a way we can reach a broader group.
I see that. And Ben and I have talked about this several times, that you don't necessarily need to be in racing anymore to represent a sponsor. And so thanks, David. Real quick, let's go to all the panelists. I think we only have a minute or two left. If a team was looking to represent your brand, are you looking, and how do they approach you? What advice would you have to a racer who wants sponsorship? Let's start with VP. I guess let's start with iBox, since you're still on the screen there. David, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry.
If a team wanted to be sponsored by iBox, how do they approach you? What would they look for? Or what is their next step?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, ibach.com. That's the first place, you can enter all your information or whatnot. You can always call us, see us at the track or whatnot. But you sent us someone our way, Jason Coleman. We get a ton of people who sign up and whatnot. So, making yourself stand out is going to be the key. So whatever information you can put on there, to make yourself look a little bit different or whatnot, but don't just stop there. You need to get a hold of someone, you need to talk to someone, and you need to plead your case, because just putting in the information is great, but we get a list of those things. So somehow we got to, vet them out. So.
Got it. Thank you. And then Ben, if someone wanted to approach VP, what is the process?
So it's and you and I have talked about this briefly before. It's unusual that we would ever sponsor someone that we don't have a relationship with. So typically we're at the races, we're in all forms of motorsports. Our company, our people live those same values as the racers. So that's our culture. So chances are it's going to start with a relationship at the local level. We have regional offices that'll do product sponsorships, things of that nature. I don't think it's ever happened that at the corporate level, we've sponsored someone that just out of the blue pitched us something that we've never heard of them before. If you, as David said, if you're standing out, if you're doing things that are unique, and you're adding value elsewhere, we're gonna notice you, and we're either gonna approach you or we're gonna have some dialogue going already. So it
Get to
starts
know
with
you
a
first.
relationship, usually at the local level, as you're building your brand and as you're building your presence. But then in the pitch, obviously, once there is that relationship and conversation, being able to show how you can add value and be an extension of our team. Just as Jackie said, our teams are typically not big. So what can you do as an extension of our team to create content and add value? So those are the things we look for.
That's really important. And then we'll head to Jesse, and then let's pull Tony up as well, since he'll head the next session. Becoming an extension of a brand's marketing is key. That's what you do if you want to represent that brand. That's why they call team riders and sponsored athletes brand ambassadors, because you are an ambassador for that brand. So you need to represent that brand and conduct marketing for them on their behalf, even when they're not at the event. You're at the event on their behalf because they're not sending employees there. So good call on that. Thanks for that, Ben. We have Jesse up. Jesse.
Yeah. Sorry,
One final thing here. Thank you again. We're going to head. So you used to work with Tony, and let's pull Tony up as well. Obviously, sponsoring companies in racing has a lot to do, or has more to do than just logos. It's not about the logo again on the car. It's about the activating and what you can do on behalf of the company. And our next session is promoting yourselves and sponsors through the media. Jesse, thank you again for letting us use your facility here on a Saturday morning. How cool is that? You got up early to open this place. That was awesome. And it is probably the coolest office, the layout and the most classy and tastefully decorated office I've been in. I mean, this is really nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tony, come on up. So we're going to bring on Tony, Megan Myers on, Dan Scheckner, Don O'Neill, and Tony has a special guest as well.
I do. I'm starting my new venture in 2023. I've got a new career change here. I'm still in motorsports marketing, but I'm working under the man himself, Vaughn Gittin Jr., and for the team, the RTR team. It's a little bit opposite of what I'm used to, being on the manufacturer side, working at K&N for 20 plus years. And now I get to move into the other side, which is a team and product and event promotion with that. And so he is one of the guys that I recognize, and I've used in examples. You guys have heard me on these summits a couple times before, is kind of the epitome of what I believe to be a leader when it comes to any time of promoting media and themselves through media. So it was only fitting to have him on to discuss this part. And one of the things I've always respected about Vaughn and the brand that he's built is really about the ideation of he has a full marketing service that operates a race team. And it's always been in my eyes, that's what I've seen, and why I've been such a proponent for Vaughn and his overall model and career over the last. Vaughn and I have been connected for almost 18 years now, working in this. And again, one of my bigger idols within the world and what he's been able to build here. So it was awesome to have him on here today. And again, Megan, which is I'm a secret fan of. Megan has really been one of those people that I think have really embraced what Alex and I bonded over maybe a dozen years ago or so, where she just embodies the piece of, hey, let's build a deck to show who I am and how I can help your company. And then we have Dan, being the editor of PRI Magazine, which is a huge proponent. PRI is a company in general for the motorsports world and what they've been able to accomplish and push out in that way. And then Don being one of the newer forms of media, being the leader in the podcast world and really supporting a big part of racers and the motorsports agenda. So with all that said, we'd like to get a little bit of input from each one of you on the promoting yourself through media and your sponsors. And we'll start with Megan. Megan, can you give us a little bit of insight on, again, if anybody's ever checked out Megan's profile and stuff, she's, again, one of those people that kind of embodies what it takes to support and put herself out there as an ambassador. So Megan, you want to take us through a little bit of what you do to kind of promote yourself?
Yes, thank you, Tony. So I'll give a little bit of background first. I've in the drag racing world, NHRA, grew up watching my dad and uncle and older cousins race. So as a young kid, been at the drag strip since day one. I knew I wanted to be a race car driver. And I was in charge of the marketing for my dad, which at the time was very little. Is just writing up press releases, race recaps, sending them email to sponsors. That was about it. Eventually we got a website, so started updating that. And then it wasn't until I was in college where marketing on social media for businesses and then for brand ambassadors really became a thing. So I went to school and studied graphic design, got my degree in that. And my dad and I had an agreement that I had to graduate from college before I could jump in his seat and go and race professionally in the NHRA. So I did that, built up skills for marketing, creative, making graphics, pictures, as well as communication. So press releases, sending emails, doing marketing via email, digital ads, hero cards, shirts, making the car look really cool, stand out as well. So I've kind of studied everything with the creative side of it. That's what really drives my fire for racing. Whereas my sister is total opposite. She absolutely hates being on the camera and she loves being one of the mechanics. She's just one of the guys. So she does that. And then I do all the creative part. But so when COVID hit and we were not racing, obviously for a couple months there, I took what I was being asked. So I was getting asked from racers, and then I was also being asked from companies, how can we get our racers that we sponsor to do more content, to do better at social media? And so when COVID hit, we weren't racing. I had plenty of time to start working on my to-do list. And first thing up there was make some sort of training to help racers get better at social media. And so that's what I did. And it's called Driven by Social Academy. And it's a video training course that walks you through step-by-step how to, first off, how to make a profile on Instagram and Facebook, and then how to make content, how to make it match your brand. And then I go into insights, analytics, looking at the data so we know what worked, what didn't work, and then sending that data on to sponsors as well so they can see, hey, I promoted your product in this post. It got this many impressions, engagements, video views, link clicks, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Megan, when you come to your tactics, when you're supporting one of your partners, is it something that you kind of do the homework on your own? Do you do a collaboration with, say, get more of an assignment, or is it something that just comes up together or how you choose to promote that brand or that product?
Yeah, so it is more of a collaboration. Thankfully, a lot of the partners that we have been with us for a decade or more. So we have really great relationships, like what who was, I don't remember who just was, that was just talking about, it starts with that relationship. So we've been able to maintain those relationships over the years with my father and myself and my sister racing. And so we work together. So for example, like Jackie said, they're promoting Shop Squad now. So worked with Jackie a little bit last year to help get signups for Shop Squad at one of the races I did last year. So worked together on that, but also because I do have really great relationships with our brands, I kind of know what they're looking for. And so, or what products they're trying to promote. So I can just go do like a little photo shoot or do some videos at the shop and send it to them. And then they can promote it without, having to come to me asking for something, because I kind of already know what they're looking for.
That's great. Well, that's all actually very insightful. And I think that anybody that kind of follows Megan's lead could have some pretty good success. I mean, if you look at some of the things that she's laid out and what she's done, she goes back to, again, what I said previously, which is the epitome of going, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is my deck. And then she figures out how to secure a sponsorship by figuring out what they need and how to give it to them. So that could take us to our next person, which is Vaughn Gittin Jr. Again, not just because he's my boss now, but because I do have admiration for the guy, and we've been friends for a number of years. He's one of the ones that really kind of set the tone when it comes to that. So Vaughn, thanks for coming on, for sure. Definitely appreciate it. I know you're trying to get your whole career and efforts in 2023 on the road. So sharing some of your secrets and your ideology behind what you've done to make your career come from being a guy that went from a hobbyist to now having a pretty extensive brand and product. How do you use yourself and your to promote your sponsors through media specifically?
Yeah, I think Alex asked me to stay the best I can to be concise, because he knows you and I can go on forever. So I think, there's obviously this topic could be discussed for a very long time. But I think obviously, the big thing what we have right now in 2023 is using all the mediums that are available to us with their intended purpose, right? So when you look at social, right, Twitter has a job, Facebook has a job, Instagram has a job, and really focusing on, using, YouTube as well, right? Using them for the what they're intended. But I think the biggest thing that people need to understand when working with brands is that authenticity and credibility are the key, right? Our audiences are extremely smart. If you're not representing a brand with your true heart and passion, everybody's going to see right through it. And that is doing a disservice to your partners. And so I know it's very easy in motorsport to get desperate and just want to race and try to get the money, but those are short-term wins, short-term gains, and then they always go away because it doesn't work for the partner, it doesn't work for your audience, and there'll be no value. And so I think the key is that when you are, before you start promoting the brand, make sure that you believe in the brand, believe in what they're doing, be a fan of the brand, you're using the product, because that is really, that's the core of this. And you heard every, manufacturer and brand owner here talk about that. And you can't fake it till you make it anymore. It's not just logos on cars. It's not the random TV interview that you get. You own your communication to your audience, specifically in social media. And frankly, that is the one thing that you can control in motorsport. And so when we are strategizing, our year, our approach is to fully, obviously we have brand partners that we work with, and I'm a very loyal guy. I've had relationships for very long times, but these relationships are always evolving. It's never, the same thing over and over. And so we work very closely with our partners, understand the goals that change year to year, quarter to quarter. And we are in those conversations and strategizing, we're understanding where this naturally fits inside of our plans and the things that we're doing. For instance, or just to jump to K&N, right? We're going to King of the Hammers, right? One of the dustiest, craziest races of the year in February. This is one of the events that we will be, accruing content for K&N.
That's great. Well, that's all actually very insightful. And I think that anybody that kind of follows Megan's league could have some pretty good success. I mean, if you look at some of the things that she's laid out and what she's done, she goes back to, again, what I said previously, which is the epitome of going, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is my deck. And then she figures out how to secure a sponsorship by figuring out what they need and how to give it to them. So that could take us to our next person, which is Vaughn Gittin Jr. Again, not just because he's my boss now, but because I do have admiration for the guy, and we've been friends for a number of years. He's one of the ones that really kind of set the tone when it comes to that. So Vaughn, thanks for coming on for sure. Definitely appreciate it. I know you're trying to get your whole career and efforts in 2023 on the road. So, sharing some of your secrets and your ideology behind what you've done to make your career come from being a guy that went from a hobbyist to now having a pretty extensive brand and product. How do you use yourself and your to promote your sponsors through media specifically?
Yeah, I think Alex asked me to stay the best I can to be concise, because he knows you and I can go on forever. So I think there's obviously this topic could be discussed for a very long time. But I think obviously, the big thing what we have right now in 2023 is using all the mediums that are available to us with their intended purpose, right? So when you look at social, right, Twitter has a job, Facebook has a job, Instagram has a job, and really focusing on, using, YouTube as well, right? Using them for the what they're intended. But I think the biggest thing that people need to understand when working with brands is that authenticity and credibility are the key, right? Our audiences are extremely smart. If you're not representing a brand with your true heart and passion, everybody's going to see right through it. And that is doing a disservice to your partners. And so I know it's very easy in motorsport to get desperate and just want to race and try to get the money, but those are short-term wins, short-term gains, and then they always go away because it doesn't work for the partner, it doesn't work for your audience, and there'll be no value. And so I think the key is that when you are, before you start promoting the brand, make sure that you believe in the brand, believe in what they're doing, be a fan of the brand, you're using the product, because that is really, that's the core of this. And you heard every, manufacturer and brand owner here talk about that. And you can't fake it till you make it anymore. It's not just logos on cars. It's not the random TV interview that you get. You own your communication to your audience, specifically in social media. And frankly, that is the one thing that you can control in motorsport. And so when we are strategizing, our year, our approach is to fully, obviously we have brand partners that we work with, and I'm a very loyal guy. I've had relationships for very long times, but these relationships are always evolving. It's never, the same thing over and over. And so we work very closely with our partners, understand the goals that change year to year, quarter to quarter. And we are in those conversations and strategizing, we're understanding where this naturally fits inside of our plans and the things that we're doing. For instance, or just to jump to K&N, right? We're going to King of the Hammers, right? One of the dustiest, craziest races of the year in February. This is one of the events that we will be, accruing content for K&N, communicating messaging that is very relevant to that those elements, and talking about the brand a lot in that element because it's so important in that space. And so that is where we stay true to ourselves, we stay true to the brand, and it's very clear to our audience that we're being real, authentic, and credible. Which not only is important for me as an athlete, right? At the end of the day, all I have is me, right? If everything goes away, I still have me and that trust that I've built with, millions of people. And that also does the service to the brand. So I really wanted to stress authenticity, credibility, making sure that these brands are a fit for you as much as you are a fit for them, because that is my perspective of a key to long-term relationships. And Again, these are partnerships. These are not sponsorships, right? Sponsorship is when your dad gives you some money to go do what you want to do, right? These are partnerships. It's two-way street. And in order for it to work, it has to be, it has to be real, credible, and you have to be able to feel it.
Sure, and those are
I-
all really, really good points. Very specifically, the credibility stands to be with going back to the reference of K&N and King of the Hammers, and you found an opportunity to fit their plan, show what their product is capable of, and that gives both yourself and K&N the validity that it needs to say, hey, that's why I'm partnered with the RTR team, as well as why the K&N products are in that kind of condition is because they're needed. It goes back to that validity, and obviously I've seen you prove that for a number of years, and I've always appreciated that for me. Thanks for all that, Vaughn. I appreciate that. I'd like to also hear, we got newer forms of media that are popping up every day. And it's a little bit more advanced. There's traditional, and then there's some of the newer stuff, which I say newer, but it's been coming around for a few years and growing with a lot of steam. And that comes to say like podcasts, and Don O'Neill leads one of the great ones. Don O'Neill is not only a racer himself and an established person on the track, but he also does a little bit of media on his own that gets quite a bit of attention. And it's very fun. So I encourage anybody to kind of check out and see Don's things. But Don, can you give us a little bit of how you use Racers and Rental Cars podcasts to support not only your efforts, but also support other racers throughout the community and the motorsports community?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. The biggest thing about the podcasting, and I guess what probably sets myself and Cam when we went into this venture, is that kind of caveat, and everybody's pulling it all up, right? I am, as I'm getting ready, a couple months, as far as I was 20 years ago when I was in the Army. And when you talk about being in the media, you talk about marketing, you talk about partnerships, you talk about being everlasting. When you're doing podcasting and you're talking about whatever the philosophy is or the company it is, whoever it is that you're working with, you have to have the passion about it, but you also have to be able to put yourself out there to people traveling around the country, standing on college and high school, speaking to kids about something, provided me multitude to be able to do that. So the podcasting and talking and ranting, if you will, or calling people out, because I will tell you one thing that the last 15 years in motorsports has taught me is that there are a lot of fakeness. And Vaughn said that about being yourself. I wake every morning and sleep every night being the same. And I think a lot of racers, they try to get to the prim and the pop, and they're faking it. And he made the comment, fake it till you make it. Well, you know what? I'm not a faker, and Cam's not a faker, and we enjoy talking to people who believe in who it is they are, and podcasting and putting yourself out there is a form of that. If you cannot have a conversation with the thin air because you have no idea whose ears are actually absorbing you about a product or who you are or how you believe, right? And then I don't know that you have that special 1%, as I heard Ben and everybody talking in the first segment about separating yourself. I don't want to talk to somebody that has just regurgitating one-liners or the talking points and can't put their own spin on it. That's not motivating to me. That doesn't make me want to listen to you or to even refer you to someone. You know, Tony's with K&N for a long time. VP, Jackie, NGK. There's a lot of people on this board that I have relationships with in the business world. Be authentic, but don't make it about your racing or you, right? But be about them. Make sure it is a partnership in how you see things. And sometimes you're not going to fit with a brand. Don't take that as a dig. Move on. Go find somebody else. So that's my little rant there. I know we're trying to keep this under an hour because I, like Tony and Vaughn and everybody else in marketing, I will talk until my eyeballs pop out. So, but thanks for having me on. Follow us, Racers and Rental Cars Podcast. Send whatever it is that you want. LinkedIn, use all the mediums. I'm an old guy, but I'll get back to you. Thanks for including me in the board today.
Thanks, Don. That was awesome. Again, I am really becoming more and more of a fan. I'm a little late to the game when it comes to podcasts, but I've actually been enjoying them more and more, not only on a professional, but a personal level. I just feel like podcasts help you get involved in the conversations and things that you see outside and give you some relativity to what that world may be. And so I definitely appreciate what Don's doing in this space, because being a fan of the motorsports industry, I think it's definitely a helpful unit. And heading over to Dan with PRI, and I think everybody here knows the importance of PRI as a company in general, and being an editor of the magazine, which is more of a traditional media piece, and it's still a solid go-to, and it's one that I look for in many cases to help promote products, and it was one of our goals to use our motorsports partners to give, again, going back to that word validity, give K&N some validity in the space of motorsports. So Dan, do you have any bigger insights you can share with us on promoting yourself, and specifically in your world of traditional media?
I do, Tony, and thank you for including us. I'm watching and observing and listening to this panel, and I love the fact that we're part of it, because I really do feel like there are so many parallels between engaging with sponsors and engaging with the media. And I'll go back and I'll steal what Vaughn said about having long-term relationships, and when it comes to media, you've got to think of it as a two-way street, right? The door swings both ways. If you're a racer and, well, actually, let me back up for a second. The title of this segment was, how to get exposure in the media, or how to work with media. The first thing that I would suggest as for a racer would be to ask questions. Ask yourself some questions. Define your goal. And getting media exposure is not a goal. So define what your goal is. Why do I want to get included in X publication or Y website? The second question should be, why should I, meaning the journalist, why should I care? We always say in journalism, you want to think like your audience. You don't want to think like yourself. Thinking like yourself is very egocentric. It's what's important to me. What do I care about? You've got to think in terms of your readership and in terms of your audience and what interests them and what's going to educate and inform them. So go outside of yourself a little bit. When I say ask questions, I also mean ask journalist questions. Come to me and say, how can I as a racer help you? Meaning, how can you help me? How can you serve me? Think transactionally. You do this when you are engaging with sponsors. Do it when you are engaging with the media. It's the same approach. So think in terms of, what can you give me that I can't get elsewhere, whether it's access, whether it's expertise, whether it's experience, whether it's insight. Ask us what we need, and then figure out how you can either provide it or facilitate it. We've talked about being a brand ambassador. You as a racer may not be a great fit in terms of the kind of content that I'm running. We're a B2B, right? So we do a lot of products. We do a lot of business reporting. You as an individual racer may not be exactly who we want to hear from, but you've got sponsor partners, which are businesses, which produce products. So just think in terms of, who is your audience? Who is my audience as a journalist, but who is your audience? Your audience is me, right? So pitch me. You pitched sponsors. You got them to give you money and parts and support and all that. I'm offering you exposure. I'm offering your partners exposure, which is pretty valuable. So sorry for the brain dump.
No, it's all good stuff. I think going back to the point being is that, you know, finding out what your partners need and what they're looking for and how you can support their needs, and using it through media, you know, things like coverage in certain forms of media, whether it be, you know, there's you know, the traditional, you know, there's the traditional media of owned, paid, earned, you know, all different concepts, but, you know, the owned is the one that you can control, and that's what you're really what you're going to sell yourself on. The earned is going to be the icing on the cake, and it depends on how you do it. Now, you know, people that we have that are, you know, in our lobby, or people that are even some of our panelists are multi-time champions, and that's how they're able to earn their media is by their performance. But that's definitely icing on the cake, because it can't be guaranteed. You know, everybody in here knows the highs and lows. They can have killer years and then have one off year, and they can't let their business dictate based off of that one off year. So they have to keep moving on the other side.
Tony, let me just make one more point here that I think is really important.
Yep.
You know, we as journalists are always looking for sources. We're always looking for authorities on certain topics. If you can be an authority on a topic, you don't have to be the authority, but if you can be an authority, or if you can provide me somebody who is an authority on a particular topic that's of interest to me, or that I'm covering, or that's going to be featured in my magazine, you're very valuable to me. So again, it goes back to thinking transactionally. What can you do to help me out? And I will in turn help you out. So it's that two-way street. And don't be shy, reach out to journalists. We have opportunities for either racers or the sponsors that work with them, their partners. So please, please, please reach out. I have relationships with every racer who has ever reached out to me. And they've provided me value in one way or another. So
that's amazing. That's a great ad. Thanks for putting that in there. And before we move on to our next topic, can we just follow up with each individual in the group? Is hearing your cohorts here speak? You know, Megan, is there anything that you'd like to add to the overall session before we move on?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Tony. And so I want to touch on two things really quick. So like what Dawn and Vaughn talked about, the authenticity and credibility. And I really liked when Vaughn said that you are representing your true passion and heart with a partner. And if you're not, it is noticeable. And so one thing that I see when it comes to social media with racers is they do all this hard work to get the relationship, to actually get the sponsorship. They finally got it done, got contract signed, check in hand. And then all they do is put the logo on the car, logo on their suit. And then they do a post on social media that says, you know, announcing new partnership, tags that company and says, check them out. And then you never hear anything again about them online. So that drives me nuts. And so that's one of the things that I try to teach in my course is that's okay to do that, to like announce your sponsorship, but you need to continue with that content and keep pushing it out there. Don't just do one post saying, check them out. You need to be more specific with your call to action. So like what Jackie had said, is it a retailer or a distributor that you need to actually promote for them to go and buy the product if they don't sell directly to consumer? Is there a website? Maybe you can have an affiliate link, something like that. So be more specific and promote more on social media. Put your heart into it because like he said, it's noticeable. Second thing I want to touch on what Dan said about print media and building relationships there, with it being a two-way street. One thing that was the biggest takeaway I got from Alex's book when I read it over 5 years ago was trying to have a media partnership. And so that's one thing that I've done since learning that, is trying to get a partnership with one of the industry magazines and coming up with a deal to put ads in that magazine for our sponsor at a discounted rate. So instead of it being, let's say it's $2,000 for a full page ad in one printed magazine, maybe I can work out a deal with that magazine and I can get it for, let's say, $1,500. And then I can go and bring that to my sponsor. So I'm helping them save on their advertising budget. And it's also, it's promoting all three of us at the same time. So those are two things I wanted to touch on. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to my next session later on.
That's great. I'm looking forward to it too.
Hey,
Don,
Tony,
you have something for your dad? Yep.
Yeah, I do. Apologies for the connection from the deep south, but I want just one last thing. And I know we talk a lot about, somebody made the comment about having a bad year, not race winning, whatever the case is. I think if you guys take anything away from what I say, worry about sales for your partners. No matter what it is that you do, yes, you wake up 7 days a week and you're worried about racing, but at some point in every day, you have got to figure out how to drive sales for your partners, period. At the end of the day, you cannot increase a company's bottom line in one way, shape, or form. It's just not going to work, because every company out here runs on money. It doesn't run on wishes and dreams and hopes and prayers. So just always figure out how to make that company more money, their business development department, however it is, relationships, distribution channels, but always worry about trying to make that company money in some way, shape, or form.
That's great. And that adds to both what Megan and yourself have both said, using the example of, say, mechanics wear and Jesse's lead in that way. You can't just come out and say, hey, mechanics wear is on the side of my car and we use them in the pit. Well, explain why they're a partner of yours. And hopefully it's more than just because of the check. It's because you believe in their brand and their product. And it's something that helps further your endeavors on that side. So definitely supportive in that way. And I appreciate those other comments. Vaughn, anything else you wanted to add, or is there, I think you covered quite a bit, but is there anything that you heard from the other side that you want to add a little bit to?
There's a little detail or a little bit of mindset as well. A lot of people that are on here are growing and looking for perspective on how to grow. And, these partnerships are not always just about money or product. Some of these brands can help you grow. And so many people don't spend the time, energy, and effort in trying to grow their audience, grow their media outreach, and because they're so focused on being in the garage, working on the car and racing. But you have to grow, because your value, is relevant to your audience. And so some of these deals you guys should be making would be to get these brands to use you and leverage you, bring you to events, use you in their advertising and things like that. And that is a massive value to you. It's not a check today, but it will earn a check tomorrow. So when you guys are strategizing your approach to these brands, be realistic of your value. It's very clear to see who you're up against in the market and what they're doing. And if you're not able to stand toe to toe to them with what you're asking, get a little more creative, help them help you grow. And that might mean that you're skipping 2 races that you really want to do a marketing initiative for them. That's going to be a nationwide promo or a regional promo, whatever the case is. The other thing is, as you're growing your brand, or your brand, your race team, you should be creating content. Well, if you don't have an audience, where's that content going? So create a strategy with your partners that as you're creating content, create a launch strategy that they're all involved in. They all want the content. They all want to be, an exciting, beautiful way to show their product. So as you're creating content, instead of it just going on your channel, work with your partners, work with media to get that out in different places, which in turn will get the faces on you, grow your audience, and also achieve the goals of, your partners. So there's a little bit of strategy there. Again, we could talk for hours, but hopefully that's helpful. And it's an honor to be on here with everybody here. A lot of great knowledge being shared, and really cool to be a part of it.
Thank you, Vaughn.
Great. Thanks everyone. Alex, I think it's your turn.
Well, thank you, everybody. That was a phenomenal session. I'll tell you one thing. Not only did I learn a little bit in terms of updating some of the outdated philosophies I have, but I realized, man, I need to make these sessions longer. So at the end of the summit, there's an assessment. We'd like to ask, what did you like? What did you learn? What do you like to hear more of? Who'd you like to hear again? And last time around, the sessions went a little long, and we added a couple recommendations on networking. And this time around, I think we need to do this session again, except longer. 30 minutes was not long enough. I could have kept listening to you guys for another hour. So thank you very much. I think that was awesome. We're up next is going to be activating at events to increase brand value. Activating at events is important because while what Vaughn was saying, you create content and you have to have value for sponsors, you don't necessarily have to race in order to create value. What you do at the event when you're not racing, what you do in between events can be valuable. There's a lot of ways that you can represent and create value for sponsors. Let's pull up Kevin Miller, President, CEO of USAC. Matt Martelli.
Hey, Alex.
How you doing, Kevin? Hey, man. And
I'm
then
doing
Matt, President, CEO of Mint 400, and also the creator of the first original Gymkhana videos through Mad Media, his company. And we have Dan Dennehy Rodriguez from SCCA, Sports Car Club of America. We have Dan up. Right on, right on. So last time around at the last summit, Matt and Kevin gave a lot of good insights and into how to activate at events. Dan is a first-time panelist on this one, but Dan, I'm going to start with you because my understanding is SCCA has 2,000 annual events with 55,000 active members, and I think 100,000 participants you reach in the different regions. Holy moly. How can you activate? And what are the tricks and what have you learned about what drivers and teams can do at these events to activate on behalf of brands they represent, their sponsors?
Yeah, first off, huge honor to be a part of this panel. Some incredible leadership as a part of this. So it's really an honor to be amongst these women and men. I have a couple different thoughts that I want to share with everyone. First and foremost, the SCCA being one of the oldest and largest sanctions within America, we've got a lot of opportunity to support our racers and race teams. And one thing that I always tell my drivers and teams whenever we're talking about sponsorship is that you need to treat the decals on your car as a celebration of the consummation of your partnership. It is the livery of your car is not the end. It is rather the beginning, and it is an invitation for your spectators and your followers to allow you to represent your brands, right? And so often when, we look behind Alex and we see Bud on Dale Jr.'s car, right? That livery is iconic, but it also invokes emotion. It makes you, align with the driver. And on a regional or club level, you as drivers and teams have all the same opportunity to respond and to act as an ambassador to those brands. So when we talk about activation on driver and team level and club sports, you still have all the same opportunities. To a 6-year-old, a driver is a driver, and you are realizing the same dream that someone in NASCAR, IndyCar, or pro sport is doing. You still have all the same opportunities. It's just a different scale. Some ways that I've seen activation weaponized by drivers that we've actually been able to use ourselves are uses of QR and hashtags. And the reason why I mention that is that although in a race weekend, and whether it's circle track racing, if it's drag racing, drifting, no matter what form of motorsport we're doing, we all have a paddock area. And we all have the opportunity to use our paddock area as an asset. What do I mean? One of our drivers blew my mind by using easily set up displays with QR codes so that when you see him working on his car and you think to yourself, man, what does he have on his build? Well, he represents all of his partners using a QR code so that whenever someone comes up, he can very easily have that conversation of, oh, I use this sway bar, I use this end link, I use this product. Again, offering up a way to act on behalf of partners. And another thing that's also worth mentioning about activation, I think when we think of activation as teams, we think typically of the race weekend. Activation, as Vaughn was talking about, is equal parts using your personal brand, your vehicle, your team to go out to events to support your partners. And some of the best ways to use activation as a point of ROI for a prospective partner is show up at their place of business. Use your personal social circle to go out and support an event. Case in point, one of my own personal partners is a local brewery to me in Pittsburgh. So every time when I do my livery unveil, I do it on site. All my friends and family,
Yeah, I wonder why.
they may enjoy a couple of beers, but the deal that I have with that brewery is that the cover goes to me. The beer sold goes to you. But that's a great way of doing a simple activation as a club racer on a personal note that any one of us could use to generate some revenue. I'm really excited to hear the thoughts of others. So I'll let my segment end. Again, thank you very much.
I suspect you spent a lot of time at that sponsor, right?
That is the reason why I look and am this size versus some of our more fit drivers. Yes.
Classic.
Frankly, I just wish you lived closer so I could come over there and have beers with you. But
Yeah.
no, I think to your point, that's really one of the keys is real activation, like personal activation. We live in interesting times, and I think that now more than ever, post-COVID, people are really yearning to connect with people and with brands, and they want to be engaged.
Matt, you also have beer sponsors, and one of the ways you activate at your events is you actually have a Mint 400 beer.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because what we started realizing is that we're not big enough for the big companies to care about us. And frankly, I don't drink their beer. So we wanted something that fit our culture. And we wanted branded product, and we know that our consumers will buy branded product from us, and it became a revenue stream. And what our long-term goal is to get that branded product into stores nationally, which is now happening. So yeah, it's really cool sponsorship that we've developed over the last few years. And alcohol and racing have inherently been tied together. In fact, we started racing in America because we were smuggling booze from city to city and state to state. That's how fast cars started being built. So at least we forget that and realize our history. And, in other words, it's also a celebration. You finish a race, you want a beer, we spray champagne, we have hard liquor post event. So, and our spectators drink, throughout the day. So it's a part of the DNA of our culture, and we want to celebrate that, and that's a great example of a really integrated activation. I have a couple of slides that I'm going to share and just kind of walk you through a few things that we've seen at the Mint 400. Let's see if I could do this here. Too many if I can get the technology to work here. Hold on one second here.
We have all these brilliant people on the call and in the room, and we don't know how to put a picture on the screen. I love it.
Right.
Hey, Matt, while you're doing that, I want to say that this wasn't planned, but the Warsteiner logo is in the background on my slide. When you're talking about beer,
there's Kevin.
We actually did exactly that with a beer sponsor, and we at our Porsche series we celebrated every day with a Prost with Warsteiner beer, and it became a huge hit for the drivers to come over after the racing to unwind, and we served pizzas. We had a pizza station and Warsteiner beer, and that experience bonded a lot of our teams, and it really grew the series as well. Very small sponsorship, virtually no money, just free beer from Warsteiner, but it created a party in the paddock that honestly we love the partnership because it brings everybody together. So I just want to introduce.
That's a good point, Kevin. Kevin,
Interrupt
that's
you, but
you know, Kevin, that's a really good point, because a lot of brands sponsor not necessarily for the visibility of their logo during the races, but it is to meet other sponsors, and it's for business to business, B2B, with other brands at the events. So by providing a hospitality tent, either at the series level like USAC, you do, or at the team level, which is, you know, you got thousands of race teams, they can do this as well. It by providing that hospitality environment, it encourages other sponsors to come into that hospitality because they want to meet the people who are in there. Tonight, we're going to be in a suite at A1 Supercross, you know, with Monster Energy and all of their VIPs. And I'm excited to watch the races, but I'm way more excited to go hang out and chat with fellow colleagues and friends at Supercross.
Yeah, we'll come back to it after Matt.
I think Matt has his slide up now.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just trying to double check here, make sure you guys see the Fremont Street.
No, we see a black screen.
I see a black screen, Matt.
You just click on play, maybe.
Hold on one second here. Gotcha. Let me keep talking, Kevin. Cover me for a second.
Well,
I got it.
Yeah, I will.
So Kevin, you
go back to it is the point, Alex, I wanted to bring up, but you know, last time we talked about, and Dan was a great preview into this, was, you know, let's not focus on the sticker on the car. Let's focus on the entire package for a sponsor. But a couple of things that I want to really harp on is the experience. I think it's going to lead into Matt Fremont very, very well. But the experience that you're providing sponsors is such a big part of the entire package.
Yes.
When they get to the track, whether it's the food you're serving, whether it's the tickets you're offering, they want to feel like they're part of the competition. They want to feel like they're part of the event. We have a very long-standing sponsor. I think it's going on 11 or 12 years with AMSOIL, and every year we have to deliver more and more to keep them engaged as a sponsor. And we actually bought a 2-seat sprint car last year that this year will make its debut. I think we did it last year, a couple races. We actually purchased a car this year that we're going to now be giving 2-seat sprint car rides on behalf of AMSOIL for their dealers. So for their dealers to come to sprint car races and jump in a car. So that experience part plays well. And Matt, let's talk about Fremont Street.
That's cool because they're passing through, the sponsors passing through that hospitality to their customer.
Right.
And hopefully getting more business from their customers. So yeah, right on. That's a great point. Is you can use your racing, you can use your hospitality, you can use your pit to help sponsors and give them that environment that allows them to do even more business with their customers. So go ahead, Matt. We can now see Fremont Street. I know what that is. Been there many times, every single year, I think. Love that place.
Well, yeah, let me first touch on, you know, what Kevin just explained. And one key thing that he talked about is that a lot of times our sponsors are not capable of doing good activations. So we've got to help them, you know, for them to get a car and, you know, and do that type of activation. It just wouldn't be cost effective. So this is something we've discovered over and over, is a lot of times that, you know, we've got to package that in with the sponsorship deal, you know, and make sure that they have a successful activation. Because what plagues us as event promoters is, you know, when a sponsor comes and pays X amount of dollars and they show up to the event, you know, there's, for example, at Fremont Street, which is our off-road festival, there's 25,000 people there. And they come back to me and they go, well, you know, we didn't really think it was worth it. And I'm like, what? Like, we just put 25,000 people in front of you. And then now we've gotten in the habit of documenting every booth so that we can go back and look at a photo of their booth and go, oh, well, yeah, you had a 10 by 10 with nobody in it. So of course that's not going to work, you know, especially in the environment that we're working in now, where consumers go to very sophisticated events. The expectation is that we're all sophisticated as well. So the slide on the screen you're seeing is our off-road festival, which we do downtown Las Vegas. And we do it there. It's very actually expensive and inconvenient for us, but we do it there so it's accessible to people beyond off-road racing. we get about 30% looky-loos of people who have no idea what's going on, and they just happen into the event. And so it's a great way to get more crossover people. But that being said, there has to be engagement. This is an example of being aggressive. So on the other side that you can't see is BFGoodrich's booth. On the left side is their merchandise booth. And so they asked me, they said, can we put Rob's truck in the middle of Fremont Street? Now everybody's got to walk around it with a big target on the ground. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, that's a great way to, excuse me, to engage everybody and to make sure that you're not going to sit back and hope that people see your brand. You've got to be aggressive in event activation.
And then one of the reasons why this is important is because I saw thousands, probably more than that, tens of thousands, it seems, of spectators stopping and taking selfies in front of that car. They're in front of Rob's truck. They're taking a selfie with Rob. Sometimes Caden's there. Amber's often with them. They're getting photos. Well, those photos don't just reside on a phone forever. Those photos then go to social media. So every spectator, every attendee, every consumer that's walking down the Fremont streets taking photos and selfies is posting most of those on their social, and it's reaching many, many, many more people. So it's not just about seeing the truck, but it's allowing consumers and spectators to have content for their photos that they display on their social media. You're giving them a backdrop with your logo on it.
Yeah,
and
100%. And nothing's more powerful than that type of engagement, because what we want as promoters is we want every single person there to be posting and tagging us and our sponsors. So creating these opportunities for people to take, or to create social media content is key.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Rugged Radio's meet and greet, which has been going on for a few years now, and it's been fantastic. Really successful program. What Rugged does is they bring all their sponsored riders down to the event, and they have them sign autographs. They've done it now multiple years, so it's become like an anchor point of everybody knows that that's the place to go to sign autographs. It's become actually so successful that a lot of the drivers who aren't sponsored by them actually come and do signatures there, because it's the place to do that.
Right on.
The other key to this that I can't stress more is collecting data. So they collect everybody's email, phone number, address, etc., so that they can follow up with emails and convert these into sales. Right to the right of this, you'll see they are doing sales, which is, again, something that we highly encourage, because the old ideas of like, 3-step distribution and, race on Sunday, buy on Monday. Yeah, cool. It does have an influence, but why not get their money then? Especially with smaller items.
That's a good point.
People are showing up to events nowadays with money in hand, with the expectation that products are going to be available. And I think that, the world's changed now, especially with services like Amazon. I mean, you can order something and hours later it's delivered at your doorstep. So why would that same consumer then come to an event and think that it's okay to look at some product and then, days, weeks, months later, hope that you're converting that into sales? It's a bad marketing plan.
We do live in a world where there's an electronic highway that connects every one of us and every company to every consumer. And that highway, it's digital, it's there. All we have to do is open the doors that, that connect the front door of the company to the front door of the consumer. And email does that, direct messaging does that, social media can do that. But when that door is open, then it allows for that transaction. So someone can be on site and purchase immediately through activation like that. I know, Matt, are you finished? Or I was going to head to Kevin also.
No,
I know Kevin does QR codes, and we have to remove the screen. I think your screen's still up.
Yeah.
So real quick, Kevin, Dan mentioned earlier on QR codes at the SCCA events. I know that USAC, you at the last sponsorship summit, you're talking about how USAC utilizes QR codes. Now, Matt gave a lot of examples how brands activate at events and use the events to activate through their teams. But you also talked at the last summit about how teams themselves are activating for the brands. Maybe the brand is not at the event, but the team is at the event activating for the brand. Can you give some examples of that? And then we'll go to Dan. And Dan, I know that you had an example with Goodyear.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I know there's a lot of drivers, especially a lot of teams on here looking for advice on how do I get sponsored? How do I take care of my sponsors? And you know, number one, like we said, it's not the focus on the single post. It's not the focus on the sticker on the car. You have to look at the complete package. You have to look at the track you're running at, the sanctioning body you're running for, and how they can help you deliver for that sponsor. I think I said this at our last summit, and I'm going to repeat it. Go to your sanctioning body. You know, we have 3,000 people at a typical sprint car race sitting in the stands, which is great for sponsors, right? We have 60,000 people watching online on Flow Sports. 60,000 a night, 4.3 million people watch a year. I don't have one driver at this point. I don't have one driver that walked up to me and said, "Hey, Kevin, can you package my sponsor, my car into your program better?" Now, if I got 4.3 million people and you need numbers to sell to your sponsor, you want numbers. Don't take them the package I give you that says we have 4.3 million people watching and say, this is who's going to watch that sticker on my car go by, because they're not going to see it. Why don't we stop the show? Because at a typical sprint car race, we have over an hour of downtime. Stop the show and talk about your sponsor. Let's go to Brady Bacon, who's a great promoter, and stop our show. I did have one driver that just called me last weekend. Cody Swanson, who's one of our top drivers. And I said, Cody, go out to that sponsor and tell them you're going to do an engagement in the broadcast and whatever they want to do. But take advantage of the broadcast, take advantage of the track you're at. Talk to track promoters you're racing at. They need content too. And you as a driver can provide content for the broadcast, for the track, that is exposing your sponsorship beyond your car, beyond your pit area. And I think that's critical in today's world of delivering for sponsors. You've got to be more than posting. I see a lot of posts with an energy drink on the race car. Every week I see one of those, right? That's not getting it. Engage people more. That's the first thing. And that is, look at the total package of what is provided around you to take advantage of as a team, and reach out to your sanctioning body, reach out to your tracks.
Number quick question, Kevin, how many events a year does USAC put on?
Oh, thousands. I mean, you know, just we have multiple series with rally and off-road, and you know, there's so many things that we're involved in road racing now. But the one I focus on the most is our grassroots program, Sprint Car Midget Racing, because we have probably 1,000 events there over across the country, and we're on Flow Live, and that's where you got visibility. And I don't see teams or track taking advantage of that. Tracks always say, "Hey, streaming's hurting my business," which, you know, we can debate that forever, and I'd love to do that. However, I tell tracks all the time, give me your sponsors to promote at your race. If we're at Kokomo Speedway, let's run some ads for your sponsors.
Yeah, I love that.
Not one track in the country in the past 2 years give me an ad to run on Flow for their track sponsors. They've given me ads to run to promote their future races, but not for their own sponsors.
So
and I
guys,
think
you're hearing the
it's a
president
problem
of
with sport.
USAC right now saying, give me content. I do thousands of races a year and I need content. I will air you if you give me content. Matt, is that the same with you? Mad Media in the Mint 400, California 300, UTV World Championship. If a team gave you media, is there potential for you to use it in your programming?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm going to send some media to Kevin because that's those.
I didn't say it was free, Matt.
Well, you
That's
know,
awesome.
we can work something out, but no, I mean, he's absolutely right in that, you know, racers need to also look at the promoters as a tool for distribution of content and engagement. You know, we have to do a lot of storytelling in our live streams, you know, about who the racers are, their backgrounds, et cetera. If we don't know that, you know, you're not going to get coverage. And it's really difficult for us because the minute we have, you know, 400 race teams with 1,000 racers at our event, it's impossible for us to know everybody's story, especially if you don't have your program together. Like if you don't have a bio on your website, if you don't have a website, if you don't have a bio on your social media, you know, if we don't know that those basic infos about you, like we can't talk about you, you know, and it's our job to talk about you, you know, so help us help you. I think that, you know, it's a really valid point, you know, as well as it'll help engage your sponsors.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
A good point there, Matt. One thing you could do as a racer, go to your track announcer, go to your broadcast partner, take your resume, take a background sheet. Here's my headshot. Here's my sponsors. Here's where I live. Just like a hockey player, when they go to play hockey at a tournament, they've got a scout sheet, and the teams are leaving behind sheets for all the scouts of all about the player. Take action on your personal self. Go to the announcer. We have Chet, our guy Chet. Give him funny stories about you because he's looking for stuff to talk about too. But you have to take that initiative. Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. If you get to know the announcers and let the announcers get to know you, there's a much greater chance of you being on the microphone and on the PA system. Let's close with Dan. Dan, SCCA has thousands of events, but probably not any television or media such as, you know, NBC Sports, CBS Sports, like the others. Your activation is more for the fans that are in attendance, and then the social media that they might hit if they post photos of events. You were telling me, and let's go quick because I know we're at the end of the session here, an example about Goodyear where they did a phenomenal job activating.
Yeah, well, Goodyear did a phenomenal job. It has continued to do a great job activating at our runoffs event, which is our championship road race event, which happened at VIR actually a few weeks ago. Goodyear did a phenomenal job because they took what was available to them. We were hosting a podcast that did a beginning and after variety show for the 3 race days, and worked closely with those talents to make sure that Goodyear was a part of that. And those are some of those very cultural and natural ways for partners to be able to activate at events, and for us as drivers to be able to make those opportunities available is a value add that partners greatly want. Sometimes partners don't necessarily know what can be available. So being transparent and using a lot of ideation with partners can really deliver some great outcomes, which is a fun way that Goodyear got a win fairly recently.
And one of the best, I was going to say, one of the best things that drivers can do at events is hand out coupons and hand out marketing material on behalf of the sponsors. And if you're not handing anything out, perhaps you can collect email addresses or collect leads, because a lot of brands need leads. And if you're in the field and they're watching you represent them, then if the sponsor or the brand knows who that is, then they can reach out to them later. Maybe 15 years ago, I was at a Supercross and DC Shoes was there, and they took photos of myself and my children, and it was really cool because they gave us a little JPEG of it. And it wasn't until a year later that I realized the value, because they emailed me a high resolution file a year later, which was really cool. They first emailed me the JPEG at the event, but 365 days later, I'm still on their database, and now they're reaching out to me. And that email with the picture of me and the kids, of course, came with a coupon for discount on DC Shoes. Click here, get 50% off. And that was really effective. I thought that was smart. So we ran out of time on that session, guys. Thank you very much. Next summit, we're going to do a longer sessions. I promise. This was my bad in scheduling, but I was trying to squeeze a lot in, and I guess not everybody talks as fast as I do. So we're going to head over to a session now that I talk about incessantly, and I'm almost getting tired of talking about it. Deck some proposals. Let's grab Tony Yorkman and Megan Meyer. Let's get them back on the screen. Deck some proposals. And this is important for those of you who've heard this, please, take a potty break and go grab something to eat right now. Come back in 25 minutes. But for those who haven't heard it, this is key. I think this is fundamental when it comes to looking for sponsorships and trying to raise awareness. George has a question for me real quick. George?
No question. I just want to make a comment. We're getting a ton of people interacting, and we really appreciate everybody asking the questions and comments. But since we're running a little bit behind, let's keep those till after the show, and then we'll answer them at the last. So thank you guys very much. Go ahead.
All right, sorry about that. So the goal of this sponsorship summit is to help you find sponsors and learn what they value, and then create that value through your racing, and then present it in a way that they buy a sponsorship and they sign up and become a partner, as we've heard in your program. But first you have to meet a sponsor. Well, how do you meet sponsors? I get that question a lot. We'll talk about that in the networking at the end, where you meet them in person. But once you've met somebody in person, you want to provide them with some kind of material that attracts them to your program and starts a conversation. And that's a deck. A deck can be anything that gets a conversation started that then starts a relationship. It can be a postcard that's very well done. It can be a video. It can be a link to a website. It can be a PDF file. It can be a pamphlet. If it's something that attracts attention and lets a brand manager or sponsorship director look and go, wow, this is interesting. Our brand could use this type of marketing. That's a deck. Decks are usually colorful. They can be videos. There's a lot of imagery in a deck. You want to show through images to somebody who doesn't know much about what you're doing, what they can get involved with if they join your program. Now, a proposal, that's after they know you and after you know them. You don't propose to somebody you just met. You get to know someone for a while first. After you've met a new potential sponsor through a deck and have a relationship started, you learn from them what they need. When Vaughn and I were speaking a few days ago, he has an executive summary that he sends out. When he meets a new brand, he asks them, what do you want? What do you need? And if sometimes, many times actually, it's not a right fit because he can't provide that for him, so he doesn't even pursue that sponsorship. But there are other times when the brands actually could use what Vaughn can provide. And now the conversation starts, now the relationship starts. After he knows them and they know him, then he can start to put something together that says, I can do this, 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 and that for you. And I'll be at these events, I'll be reaching these people. And that's now your proposal. A proposal can be a Word document. It can be just written down. It's typically is just a Word document, and it's a list of what you are going to provide, potentially with some values for a sponsor in return for them sponsoring you and partnering with you. You're an extension of their marketing arm. So it's your way of saying, if you sponsor me and join my program, here's what I can do. And then also here's what we expect from you, typically product or money. So there's a difference between a deck and a proposal. Don't send the wrong one at the wrong time to the right person, because you probably won't get a call back. Proposals are very specific. They say exactly what you're going to do for a company after you've met that company and you know what their business model is. And the proposal is what they're going to hold you to. It'll probably become part of a contract that you're going to have. If it's a big sponsorship, you're going to sign a contract, and that proposal will list what they expect from you. Now, the deck, that's something that you're using to fish. It's eye candy. So decks, you want to try to cater a deck to the type of company that you're soliciting. An energy drink has different needs from, let's say, a tire company. Tire company has different needs from a hand power tool company. So a service provider has totally different needs. So you don't send the same deck to attract the same, all these companies. You want to provide a company with material and sort of eye candy that's going to attract them. With an insurance company, show them decks that demonstrate visually how you're going to collect leads and maybe make the insurance company, feel good because nobody wants to buy insurance. For a retail store, show them through your deck how you're going to drive traffic to their physical locations and maybe their website. For a tire wheel company, show them how you're going to sell more tires and wheels. How are you going to do that? Then they see that in the deck, they go, I think I want to join this program. Then in the proposal, you write out specifically how you're going to make that happen. So Tony and Megan, let's talk about that for a second. Tony, when you were with K&N, when people sent you marketing material for K&N to sponsor them, how often were you getting good decks, good proposals, good material, and how often did what you received go into the trash? And then what did you look for, and what do you recommend drivers send in order to get your attention, or any marketing director's attention?
Yeah, sure. Alex, this is, I think, what's strengthened our relationship. You and I had a common bond probably a dozen years ago about, how infuriating it was that we just couldn't get the right materials and things. And it was a really big challenge of going, I know that half of these proposals, quote unquote, are going to the trash are probably people that can do a great service for me at that time. But it just wasn't, I just didn't catch it. It just wasn't there. It didn't catch my eye. I didn't do those things. And 9 times out of 10 is because it was too cumbersome. And what I mean by that is that to your point, having a deck, proposal, everything all wrapped up into one, and you're basically making a general sales pitch. And then I had to sit down and figure out, how can I dissect their program to work for me? And for me, that was just too much work. I'm going, hey, look, I'm the one that's spending the money. I'm paying you for a service, to speak very just genuinely. I'm looking for you to tell me what you can do. And if you take that in any other form of professionalism, that's not how it works. So it shouldn't work that way here. So giving yourself a deck and putting yourself out there in those ways, flash, and setting that hook, and going back to the fishing terms, and then coming back to that proposal, and really making sure that that proposal is more concise, not too much fluff, easy to read, and allows you to take that next step. It's basically your sales hook, and that's what you get, right? You're baiting it with the deck, you're setting the hook with the proposal, for using those type of terms. And I would say at K&N traditionally, I would see less than, I would give a thorough read less than 10% of what we actually came through, because there just wasn't a very, very vast group that would actually separate those pieces. And it was really, again, a cumbersome job on my side to kind of differentiate who really could help me move that needle. And so going back to using that term, finding opportunities to build my plan, to fit my plan. So when we'd have our plan, we'd set it out and create almost a matrix of sorts and say, here's what our plan, we want to hit in these areas. And here's what I found, here's what I found here. And then I would tell you that 9 times out of 10, we would rework the whole proposal that came from the person that I actually had the interest in to fit my plan. It wasn't that they weren't capable of doing it. It wasn't probably already on their agenda, but I didn't see that because they didn't know what my plan was yet.
So was that plan aligned with the budget for the fiscal year? In a fiscal year, you get a budget, and then you can take that budget and plan what you're going to do with that money?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything's going to be budget based. It always is, right? But that budget can range from anywhere from monetary to product, especially within an endemic, partner, or it could even be media or continuity and connection. Having partners that have a strong brand alliance that can actually help carry you, because you turn around and, I try to use this a lot in one of my biggest pieces that I always worked with in K&N. It was, I was always trying to give back to a partner and in more way, in the same way they gave to us. And it wasn't just about connecting our brands, but it was also about help developing their product as they were help developing ours. And what I mean by developing their product was try to help them understand going, hey, and you turn around and you go to somebody and you want to promote to going, hey, I really want to be a partner with you. And look what I'm doing over with K&N. Not only do I help you, but K&N helps you as well, because K&N's got 1 million followers on social, or they have these plans that they're putting me into. And that becomes a higher value to that partner as well. They're going, hey, I'm over here at Mechanics Wear and I'm working with these gloves and they're a great fit for my brand. But you know what? Now every K&N consumer is now seeing a Mechanics Wear piece, and it becomes a brand continuity between the two, elevates the B2B, and it helps that partnership may not give you the financial pieces that you need, and they may not give you the product pieces you need, but they definitely give you the media and the partnership recognition that you may need. So you have to really evaluate your program among all of those different levels, not just on that monetary dollar piece. You always want to get there because you need it. You can't keep going without those dollars. Totally get that. But sometimes you take on a partner just to help you get to that next one.
And that goes right in line with Vaughn was saying. Vaughn was saying brands can help you grow. And I think a lot of racers don't look at it from that perspective. They look at a perspective as, I'll race for you and you give me money or you give me parts. But there's so much more that brands can do. They can give you media. They can put you alongside other professionals. They can elevate your status. They can provide a lot of resources through their company that you might not have access to, and help you even create that media in more professional ways than you can do just with a handheld or a cell phone. So Vaughn said a lot of good things. And one thing I thought was really cool is he said, our audiences are smart. And so that leads me over to Megan. Our audiences are smart. You can't put fluff in a deck or a proposal. You can't say, hey, I'm going to be seen by 150,000 people when there's only 4,000 in attendance at the track. You have to be honest, and you have to be, your numbers have to be accurate. I often like to use series numbers. I'll get the series deck or a media card from the series that has the numbers on it, because I know if the series is sending out that data, then if I'm using that data as well, at least it'll match what the series says. So it makes me look as if my numbers are accurate. Megan, what success do you have, and what advice would you have in creating decks and proposals that are, representative of what you're actually doing and not fluff, and knowing the audience?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you and Tony touched on almost all of it. But I love what you said about getting the deck from the track, because that will give you audience or attendance numbers, media reach, stuff like that. So I always reach out to NHRA, which is the series that we compete in, and they will send me a spreadsheet that has viewers for the original airings of the races on Fox Sports, and then how many watched it, the re-airings of it, how many watched it on their live streaming, YouTube, stuff like that. And then they have just a general deck that they sent out that has all the audience demographics, like age, gender, occupation, race, household income, stuff like that. And then surveys that they conduct versus talking about how they would pick a product that sponsors their series versus a product or a brand that doesn't sponsor them, stuff like that. So reach out to the series, but you can also conduct your own surveys. And so I love doing this on our channels, and all you need is just you can use a free survey on Google Forms, or you can do like Typeform has one that looks great, but there are options that you can pay for. I just use Google Form for ours. And what I do is I make this big survey. It's about 20, 30 questions, getting all that demographic information. What brands do they use? What certain industries for products that they use? What problems do they have that a product can solve? And so I'm actually in the process right now of analyzing all the data that we got from those surveys last year that I just pushed out via my email, newsletter list, and on social media, going through that data and figuring out buckets that I categorize my audience into. And then let's say one of the buckets is that they're really into lawn care, and one of our sponsors makes carb cleaner, or they make something that applies to lawn care. Well, I'm going to take that data, put it in my deck, and then when I'm talking with that sponsor about renewal, or this could be to a new potential sponsor, I can say, hey, my audience, this is their age, demographics, their lifestyle, and they're really into lawn care, and they struggle with this problem, and I know your product could help them. And so I'm in that process right now of just analyzing all that, putting the report together. I'm going to be sending it out next week for our sponsors. And so that's something that you can do very easily. All you got to do is come up with some questions, and I've been doing this for a couple of years. The surveys that I sent out years ago really sucked compared to the type of questions that we're asking now. But I like to get very specific, asking what products, what brands they use, what actual problems they have that we could help solve for them. And so just start out with the basic demographics, just the fact that you are putting something out there, trying to get to know your audience outside of just looking at the social media insights that they give you, which is just location, age, gender, and then like what time they're on social media. You can use that for a deck, but it's not very specific. It's not really telling that potential sponsor who your audience actually is. So I like to just make my own survey, send it out. And I also like to do a giveaway. So one thing we did was we gave away a free VIP ticket to the Pomona World Finals, which is one of the biggest drag races. It's the last race of the year. Someone got a VIP ticket where they could come hang out in the pits with our team. They got restricted access, and they could come for the whole race and just be a part of our team, just for being a random person that I picked out from filling out our survey. So that's something that you can do if maybe your series doesn't have that information for you. You can definitely go and get it yourself. And so I do want to share really quickly about the proposal template. So like what Alex said, the deck it's a presentation, it's very flashy, but the proposal is just a Word document, very simple, but it has all the specific details, what you are going to deliver for that company, and then what you are asking for in exchange. So if you go to Alex's website, meetthesponsors.com/templates, that's where you can see there is a sponsorship proposal template that Alex and I have worked together to make. It's $75 for it. And I do have a coupon code. So if you use the word summit, you will get 25% off of that. This is the exact proposal template that I use for all of our sponsorship deals that has helped us get up to 6 figures in monetary sponsorships. And then also on his website, really quick, I just want to touch on that. I mentioned earlier, the social media course I have is called Driven by Social Academy. There you can also access it through Alex's website and use the same coupon code Summit for 25% off that as well. So back to you guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan. Go ahead, Tony. Was that Tony?
You know, what you both stated on was using your series as support to help you sell what your product is. And you are the series product. Going back to what Matt and Kevin both touched on, was like, they want to see you succeed. They want to see you out there promoting. They want to see you bringing other partners into the category in this space. It's good business for everybody there. So use them. They use a lot of that stuff. NHRA is another great example. They're very forthcoming with a lot of their information and knowing your audience and who you're putting in. When I say know your audience, and I mean who you're trying to sell to. If you're trying to sell your business to a company, know what they're looking for. And if they're looking for metrics, do your best to find those metrics. If you're looking to at a more of a grassroots level, or they want brand inclusion, show them how you can do brand inclusion and validity to their products. Understand, again, it goes back to Alex's age old, which was understanding what you can do to help them conduct business is really what's best. And in different levels, they look for different things. A lot of it has to do with going back to our first topic of ROI, but a lot of it has to do with product validity and how you measure on those different sides. So I think identifying and using the resources around you, like the series support or other services, it takes a little bit of investment. Invest in yourself to invest your business. And that's really what this is. Obviously, it's your passion, it's your hobby, and it's what you want to do, but it also, you're trying to make it a business, then do what it takes. And that means services like Hookit or other companies that can help you measure some of those pieces when there are companies. Know who that is.
You know, it goes back to what Don O'Neill was saying earlier, that if you don't know the business of a sponsor or a company you're approaching, and you don't know what their plan might be, if you can find ways to help them sell, all companies want to sell more products. It's all about sales. Focus first on sales if you don't know the company. If you do know the company, then ask them. Like Tony said, we have a plan, we have a budget, and then we have monthly goals and quarterly goals. Find out from someone in the company what those goals are. And I guess one question a lot of people are probably sitting there asking right now is, how do you find out what a company's plan is or what those goals are? Maybe Tony, you can elaborate on that real quick. Sales is easy. We all know all companies are in the business to sell and sell their product and generate revenue. If you can't help a company increase quantity sold, the amount of products that they are selling, you can always help them increase revenue by helping them raise their prices, elevate their brand level. So you can raise revenue by increasing quantities, or you can raise revenue by increasing prices. Sales is easy because if you can sell products at an event or give coupons or provide links on a website that drives traffic, that creates a sale, now you're generating quantities, you're helping them sell more. But let's say you can't help them sell a specific product. If you can elevate their brand level, Red Bull does a pretty good job of this. You know, they only align with champions. Mechanics Wear does a really good job of this. They align with champions. If you can be the premier brand in your category, then you can charge more. And that helps a brand raise revenue by raising prices. So Tony, go over real quick. If I'm a racer and I want to approach a company, but I don't know what their plan is, what's a good way to figure that out?
Well, you can look at some of their history and what they've done. You can look at previous years. I mean, obviously the plans change year to year, but the overall fundamentals kind of stay the same. And, when it comes to their business, do a little bit of homework and say, hey, look, they use athletes to promote in this way, whether it be results on the track, and going, hey, can I really live up to that piece, or am I wasting my time? Or is it that they're really looking for more of a partnership inclusion when it comes to content and product endorsement? Again, product, and then what levels of that product endorsement? Is it just the, in product feature, look at this, or is it going more into the validity part where you're saying, Vaughn says, I'm using a K&N filter at King of the Hammers because I need it to get to the end, right? Those are the different ways you can look at. And then there's the age old going, there's a lot of companies that are still looking for that traditional sponsorship where they just want big signage and they just want their branding really large on there. And I know most are getting away from it, but there's still some of those that are out there and saying, hey, what can I offer? And realize, I know there's a couple of questions that went through this earlier, everyone saying, hey, how do I get this? And how do I do that as sponsors? How do I get the service back from a sponsor to actually make it a partnership? And it goes back to understanding what their pieces are, but know that every piece of your program has some kind of value and identifying what that value is. One guy next to the next guy might have a different value when it comes to their logo, but it might be that you have a better value when it comes to your media, or you might be less value when it comes to your networking. So it's really going back and understanding your strong suits, how you can deliver, and pulling out those values overall. And know that just the same when you're trying to increase the value of the brand you're promoting, you're also in the same respect increasing your value. So today you're asking for that, in lack of better terms, a certain dollar for that logo size. And then the next year, if you're doing it right, you're going to be able to ask more dollars for that same logo size. And that's how you're going to progress through that piece. So identifying what they really need and then attacking with what your core values are.
I love that. And I love that because it reminds me of what Brian Deegan told me years back when he won his first Supercross title at, I guess it was Anaheim. It was the West Coast. So it must've been Anaheim. He knew he was a privateer racer, had his stock bike, didn't have any money, didn't have any funding, and he was against all these factory teams. He could not compete with them when it comes to technology. His bike was slower. He didn't have as good suspension. He didn't have the crew to help him out. He had very little, but what he did have was the ability to exercise. And so he worked out and he became physically more fit than anybody else in that race. And because motocross is a race of endurance, he just kept riding and riding, and where everybody else started pooping out towards the end of the race, he was still physically strong. So he exercised and he got himself in shape. And that today is actually still what he does. That is one of his advantages over his competitors, more so than just the technology. So find your niche, like Tony's saying. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing and try to do it better. You can find your niche and see if that can help you elevate. So we're wrapping this one up. Megan, do you have any final words before we go over to finding tire and wheel sponsors?
I don't think so. I think we touched on everything, and I love what you just said about Tony, to find your unique advantage and really figure out how you can bring something new to the table. So you have a blog article that I love to share with people saying that you don't try and steal another team's sponsor. Don't try to just replace them. You're not bringing anything additional to the table for them. So try to find something that makes you different, what you stand out, how you're unique, and how you can bring that to this table instead of just trying to say, transfer a logo from this car over to your car. I don't think that it really doesn't bring any advantage. So don't try to do that.
Exactly. That's a really good point. Thank you for that. All right, let's run over Tony. Let's queue up Tony. We have Chris Meyer from Maxis on. We have Brian Henderson from Will Pros and Michael Mathis from Maturo Tires. Let's get them up. All right, I see Tony. We still have 88 people on the call. You know, a lot of these calls, half the people will drop off after the first hour or so. And I think almost everybody is still on at this point. That's amazing. Thank you. There's Chris. Hey, Chris, how are you? I'll see you at Anaheim later. Looking, I think his mic might be muted. So looking for Brian Henderson and Michael Mathis.
Hey, Alex.
All right, there we go.
I'm here, Alex.
All right, he's there. There he is. I see him now. Hey, Michael. All right, so one of the questions, the reason why we have this session, this is a new session. So I don't know where it's going to go. I'm going to let you guys take this and run with it. But one of the biggest costs of racing, obviously, are tires. And I'm hoping that this summit alone, which is less than the cost of one tire, will help you get many more tires. And so the investment in the summit will prove worthwhile and saving money in the long run. But let's start with Chris real quick. In off-road, there was a famous saying, you know, common term years back, 50-50. And I'm wondering if that is still relevant. $50,000 and 50 tires for a typical off-road sponsorship. Is that still the way things are structured?
It's not completely irrelevant, but I'll just speak to our business. There's so many ways that a team, an athlete, an individual can provide value that, you know, we have a lot of different structures and from both sides. We've seen teams get more creative with how they can provide value and get what they need. And then how we can justify a spend or a commitment to tires. The one thing I think is typically underrated is how expensive tires are. I mean, it's not, I mean, they're expensive. Exactly. And when you're given product at no charge, I mean, that is a lot of investment from us. That's not just no big deal. That's a big commit. We are committing to you. If you are getting product at no charge, we believe in you 100%. So
how does somebody find you? How do they attract Maxis for a sponsorship if they feel like they can represent to a segment where perhaps they think you're not already marketing?
You know, we're very active on social. So I guess I'm thinking if they're in a segment that we're really not in at all, social media is a great way to get a hold of us and also quickly show us the kind of value that you're creating. You know, we do have support trucks. We work a lot with our different support truck teams. We have Chris Shaw is a longtime crew chief for us. And I mean, we work really well with him. I believe and trust a lot of what he says and his opinions. He has a lot of experience. And so, you know, building relationships at the racetrack or with whoever from Maxis or 6 degrees of separation of Maxis that you can all matter and are all ways for a name. I think back to just our friend George Hamill and some of the stuff that we're doing with him, and his sponsorship deck had floated across my desk, I don't know, 5 years ago.
And that's from the Dirt Life show, I presume.
Yes. But I was familiar with his name for a completely different reason when we started a completely different discussion, but I had this kind of background knowledge of him that was totally by accident. So you know, always put your best foot forward and be ready to sell yourself, I guess would be.
And you told me once, you said this is a business relationship. how can the sponsorship solve a need of mine? So it's not just about visibility, exposure, it's a need. You know, you need things as a marketing director for brands, and how can a sponsorship solve it? So Michael, let's run over to Turo Tires. Michael, you are relatively new to racing. It's a relatively new brand compared to some of the others that we've had on. I know you and your father founded Turo Tires, and I remember pretty much when it was starting out, you even sponsored my son at some point when he was doing Zhuja socks, I think, back in the day. Now he doesn't do that anymore, but I appreciate that. So when you're looking to get into motorsports, or when you're looking for teams, what is it that attracts you, and what is it that they can do that helps you elevate the brand?
Yeah, well, we certainly are a younger brand than somebody like Maxxis, who's so well established, and some of the other guys that are out there in the tire world. But, you know, we have been doing this for 10 years. And, you know, over that time, I think that one of the biggest things that I want a race team to understand when they come to us to look for a sponsorship, and I see our marketing managers on here, so he sees a lot of these, but understand what it is that brand wants out of the sponsorship, kind of what you just were talking about previously. So are we in this because we want to sell our tires to other racers in the series? Are we here to just promote tires to the general public? There's a huge difference in those two things, and maybe we're trying to do both. And then in general, what's the goal with the participation in the series? Again, from the brand's perspective, is it podiums, an overall championship? Obviously, everybody wants to win. Or are we out there for product validation and testing, or again, just for general brand promotion? So that's the first thing that I think a race team needs to understand when they go to pitch themselves to a brand is, what is that brand looking for out of a sponsorship? And what you just said, how can they fulfill that?
Right on, right on. All right, let's head over to Brian. Brian is with Wheel Pros, one of the largest companies that we've been dealing with lately, with more brands than I can even count. Brian was telling me that a lot of what Wheel Pros needs to do, or what racers need to do, and what he's looking for, is to create demand, to create consumer demand. How can we create demand? How can a racer create demand on behalf of a brand like Wheel Pros? And then I also want to, Tony, I'm going to hand it over to you after this, but I wanted to make the connection, since Chris had mentioned the Dirt Life show and George Hamill. I know Wheel Pros also sponsors the Dirt Life show. So how does the Dirt Life show help Wheel Pros?
Yeah, so Alex, I mean, a few things, just to touch on your first point, like with creating demand, just to give you a little background on the wheel industry. We, according to 3 different surveys we've done over the last few years, 3% of the car park, cars on the road that are 20 years or newer, 3% of them have custom wheels.
Wow.
And so we're more focused on raising that 1% or 0.5% than we are going and taking away business from our competitors, right? If we can grow the market, if we can introduce more people to the idea of putting custom wheels on their vehicle, it helps the tire guys, they sell more tires, it helps the entire industry. And so like when we're looking at racers, honestly, I'm more concerned about what the racer is doing off the track than on the track. Yes, podiums are important. They're important to your own brand and growing your own brand and being successful. But what brands like ours are looking for is really what you're doing off of the track. How are you cultivating a lifestyle? How are you, being a good role model? How are you doing all these things that really attracts people to a brand? And then once you are to your own brand, and then once you have that attention, now be authentic. Talk about products that support you, talk about businesses that support you, but not like a paid promo. I've heard on this call a lot about energy drinks and stuff so far. I think, a lot of people see through that now. They see a Monster can, but they know there's water in there or something. So, I mean, you've got to figure out how to talk about brands, talk about the products that you support you, and be passionate about it and be authentic. And then that kind of helps, right? And then the more you help these brands, the more they're going to help you. And, I'm sure we acquired Hoonigan about 1.5 years ago. And that was kind of to control our own media, as well as provide the people we sponsor with a media outlet where we can help them grow their brand as well. So, I mean, that's really where we're focused. As for the Dirt Life show, it's a great show, right? And it gets the really hardcore, the core of kind of the off-road scene. That's what they pay attention to. And so it's always important to speak to the core and never lose sight of the people that helped you build your brands. But then you've got to focus on how to grow those brands and reach people that don't already know about you.
I like what you said. I did not know only 3% of cars on the road have custom wheels. So, you know, the old saying, a rising tide rises all ships. It reminds me of the wine industry when Trader Joe's started selling $1.99 2-buck chuck, it was called. You know, people thought, oh, geez, this is going to kill the wine industry because its wine is so cheap. Actually, it created new wine drinkers and it elevated all the brands, and the entire wine industry took off. So by creating more demand for the industry, not just the product, it rises the tide for everybody. And I think Wheel Pros, I think, is the biggest wheel brand in the world. So I can see whether you would benefit when the industry grows.
Yeah, I mean, right now, like, you know, we've got 50 plus brands, and we command almost 60% of the aftermarket wheel industry in North America. And so, like I said, we're not trying to take, you know, customers from our competitors. We're really trying to grow the market and maintain our market share.
What
so,
can racers on the call do to help you grow that market share and grow the market itself?
I mean, like I said, it's what you're doing off the track, right? Like, make sure you have our, like, if we sponsor you, you better have our wheels on your personal vehicle that you drive every day. When you go to dinner somewhere nice and you park at valet, talk to the valet about the wheels you have and how you like them, and like speak to people, you know, authentically and be genuine about it. That's really where it is. You know, I mean, there's so much noise on the track or at an event that it's hard to really make a big difference there. But I will tell you, there is something that racers really can do on race day. Is you're there, you're in this life, you also see the up and coming people, right? And so everybody there racing needs wheels to race, right? If we're talking about off-road racing, they need beadlocks. And if they don't have a sponsor, they're paying for those wheels. And so go and cultivate these guys that are just coming into it and maybe don't have a sponsor, don't have anybody supporting them. We don't offer a lot of, you know, monetary compensation to a lot of our racer range, but we do offer product to a big range of people, right? And so I think going and as a racer, bringing new and upcoming guys to me or to your sponsors and saying, hey, you know, this guy's just getting into it, he's making a bunch of noise, bringing and growing your team and kind of like creating this like cartel of like your group is really powerful. And that's where sponsors, especially myself, find value in that, because I'm not at the races every weekend. I don't see all this stuff.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's impossible for us to be everywhere. Tony, I'm sure you parallel this. You and I, we used to connect many times at the races, but man, you just can't go to all the different events that are out there all the time. You need to focus on, you know, the things that are probably local or more convenient. But anyway, let me hand it over to you because I know that you had
I mean, I heard some
as well.
Yeah, I heard some great things there. I mean, and just pigtailing because Brian was the last one on. I mean, I definitely emulate what Brian has mentioned in regards to, you know, it's not necessarily what happens on the racetrack. And I think that that's really what it comes down to, is identifying yourself, again, talking to our quote unquote motorsports enthusiast on this thing here. I think that knowing that what you're trying to push across is something as an ambassadorship, right? You want people, you want to lead by example. People want to have that leader by example, and giving you that piece of, again, you're cutting yourself in validity by being a champion. But if you're not doing that, at the very least, you're creating a lifestyle. And so being able to talk about those wheels when you are, you know, at a place and showing this is where my individuality comes from. Again, with the energy drinks, I think that they're a great piece. And yes, to Brian's point, like, people see through the fact that they're drinking waters because these guys are athletes and they need to perform and ultimately what they do. But in their day to day, they still have a lifestyle that they're supporting, and that lifestyle might be infused with an energy drink or a clothing line or something along those lines. You know, we see Ken Block lead the DC Shoe March for so long for obvious reasons, but we look at it and go, hey, look, that wasn't something that DC used in the race world. It was more validity to what their day-to-day lifestyle equipment were. And I think that's the same thing with energy drinks. I think the same thing with wheels. And I think that gets me to my next point, which is there are two different approaches here that need to be considered. You have Chris and really what he uses when it comes to his product validity and what his goals are, which may be to increase his sales through the motorsports industries, whereas Brian is looking to increase his sales through the consumer agenda, right? So there's two different approaches there and how you can support those. Not that Maxxis doesn't make a great consumer product and really wants to see that move, but a fair amount of their business is in the motorsports, the actual use of it. So going back to Chris's comments earlier about it's really expensive to give product away because, look, and he's got to find the right guys because he wants the guy next to him to buy that stuff because he sees him performing well on the track. And so, there's those advantages for certain companies and also recognizing what those companies do when it comes to motorsports, right? And again, always using my history, but K&N, their products, they have race lines of products, but they never, the sales from those products were never really a strong consideration because the consumer drive was what was important. And we use those race products because it was the same technology to promote the consumer side of it. Whereas somebody like Ibach, very specifically, like David talked about earlier, you're out there and he has to sell to all those guys on the track. That's a big portion of what their business is. So it's kind of identifying who those different guys are and how they reach their ultimate goals, which is sales, consumer, enthusiast, in use, not use, so on.
Yeah, Tony, if I can real quick on your point about, sales to the racer. I think as a racer, go to your sponsors, ask them if they have an affiliate program, ask them if you can get a code, right? Or something.
Yeah.
And as a racer, go out to the racetrack and promote, you give them a special code, they can go, they have an affiliate program, they can buy product at a discount because they're not getting it for free from someone. And you raise your own brand as the racer, right? You're bringing all these sales. Guess whose sponsorship gets renewed the quickest? The guy that's bringing sales. No doubt about that.
Yeah, I love that. That's another great way to get yourself brand equity. Working with a partner equity is probably a better term to make it, is going out and saying, hey, I can help you business and let me show you how, and actually putting a metric behind what you're doing and showing your effort. I mean, that's a great point, Brian, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is something that I think a majority of manufacturers out there have the capability of doing, would like to see, but it's definitely not something that's embraced as often as it should be. There's certain companies that push it, but there's not a whole lot that do. So I think if you open those doors yourself, you could help you out and help them.
I'd
Yeah,
like
I
to
think
take
that's
that. Oh, go ahead.
another real quick, Alex. I think that's another important point, that if they don't have a partner or affiliate program, introduce them to it. Plant the seed of what it could be and show them that it can work. And guess what? Now you're even more valuable to them if they didn't have a program.
So Brian, with those affiliate programs, do you educate your teams how to represent the brand and how to better sell your products?
So actually, it's something that we're planning on launching in this upcoming year. We don't currently have like a VIP or affiliate program. It's been something in the works. And we've kind of built this whole VIP experience website separate from everything else, where racers, if you're one of our sponsored drivers, you're going to get these like fancy cards that you can hand out. And they have your name on them, the card, everything else, the web URL, and we'll be able to track, right? For us, it's not only important to sell the product, but it's also to collect information. So you as a racer, you go to a race, you hand out this card, they come, they register on the website, they give us all their info, they give us what series they race in, they give us all their social profiles. And then now we can start having metrics of who you're bringing to the table, what they're driving, what they race, and kind of all of that. It's it's very important, and I think it's something you're going to see in the current economic environment. Marketing budgets are shrinking. I'm sure anybody on this call could validate that. But if you can figure out how to keep doing it and growing it, that helps grow the marketing budget again, right? If you can now have the people you're paying to race bring sales in the door, that helps everybody. And so, that's something we're really focused on launching this year, and we've got really high hopes for it.
Excellent. If a racer on the call today wanted to get a hold of Wheel Pros in the future to become part of that program, what is the method they can do so?
So we've got a brand manager for pretty much each one of our wheel brands or each one of our segments. And so like the easiest way is to reach out through Instagram, DM one of the accounts directly, and then you'll get in touch with exactly the guy at the brand you want to support. Alternatively, you can contact Wheel Pros corporately, and any one of our team members will get back to you. We do get a lot, sorry to go back, but you were talking about decks and proposals and all this. It's just like a resume. Make it like the first contact, make it very direct and make it short and sweet, right? Like you send me a 20-page deck, I'm not reading it. I saw Vaughn Gittins on this call. He's a good personal friend of mine, but Vaughn does racing. I mean, he's not even a racer anymore, but he does brand promotion and brand ambassador as good as I've ever seen it. He's, I think when you talked earlier about his executive summary, I saw that, at the very beginning, I was like, wow, this guy is running his program like a business. As a racer, that's how you have to think about this, because that's what the brands, how they want to interact with you. They're in it as a business as well.
Hey, Brian, that's kind of, we've all touched on that. I think that's a really important thing that you realize as an individual racer, as a team, is you're a business and you are a brand, and you should approach it as such in a professional manner, that you're building value for yourself. So the time invested in promoting your sponsors and delivering value that's relevant to them makes you more valuable down the road as a brand, as a little company that we can work with, like a little mini marketing company, if you want to think of yourself that way. But don't underestimate the fact that this is a professional business partnership with a purpose of driving sales, whether that's sales within the racing community or connecting the dots from the high performance R&D tech stuff that we learn at the racetrack that makes it to the tires that are on your daily driver. Both are creating value for the brand.
Well, let me ask you then, Chris, does Maxxis have an affiliate program, or do you have a program that educates your racers on how to better sell the brand on your behalf?
It's funny. We're in a very similar spot to Brian over at Wheel Pros. We have created a small, we called it a concierge. What did it is?
And I'm going to Michael next. So Michael, I'm setting this up for you. So go ahead, Chris.
This is a small concierge program for best in the desert racers, where they could reach out directly and be directly contacted by someone to help assist with obtaining tires at a deep discount or something to that effect. We would love to make that larger. There's some logistical stuff in the background that makes it a little complex, but it's on our radar and important that we find a way to have something more robust than we have in place right now.
So, all right. So just to put everything in context here, these summits are events that draw a lot of racers. What if I had an affiliate program through the summits where somebody could purchase any of the products that are represented here by some of the marketing directors? Would that be a type of affiliate program? Hey, you attend the summit, you get 50% off your next set of wheels or tires or blank. Is that something that any of you would consider? And I'll start with Michael.
Yeah, we would consider something like that as a way to offer an additional benefit to people who participate in a program like this, because obviously if you're participating in a program, you're trying to better yourself as that mini marketing business that he mentioned. So yeah, I think that'd be valuable. And I'd like to also add a couple of tire specific comments that I think racers need to consider preliminary to even sending out their deck to a brand, just to make themselves look like they are that professional mini marketing agency. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I guess always gets a good snicker out of us is when somebody comes to us asking for a tire that we don't even make. So you haven't even done the basics of looking at the website to see what kind of product we build. I'm sorry, I don't have tires for your Spec Miata. Second, can you actually use my tire in your competition? So if your series has a spec tire, I'm not going to put an Atturo name on a vehicle that's not using my tire in competition. So that's another one that is an immediate check that the racer should do before they even go to a brand. And then not only is it the proper tire for that class, in other words, just having the right tire spec that passes tech, that's not good enough. It's got to be the right tire for that application.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. Back when Pro 4 in the short course world was not allowed, or was primarily using development tires, race spec tires. We had a number of teams who would ask us about using our DOT tire, which was primarily for Pro 2 or Pro Light. They wanted to run it in Pro 4. Yeah, it passes the tech. It meets the general dimensions that it needs to pass the tech, but it's really not the right application, and it's not going to give you a competitive advantage when you're going against a purpose-built race tire, running an otherwise street tire. So those are some of the things that I think a racer needs to do before they start going out and seeking sponsorships. Put in a little bit of due diligence and understand who this company is that you're going and asking for something. You know, make sure that they actually make a product that's going to be applicable to your particular vehicle. And, you know, the other thing that we really like to see is a team who's actually tried our tire. They bought some and ran on them before they come asking us for either money or free stuff. So we really like to work with people who actually have an affinity for our brand and an affinity for our product instead of just wanting free stuff. That really helps to lead to the kind of partnerships that Brian and Chris have talked about to help genuinely promote that partnership and our brand through their channel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like the part where making sure that the tire fits the application, because you're right. If you could have all the free tires you want, but if they're not going to be competitive in that particular series, it's going to hurt your racing and it's going to hurt the brand, because it's not going to make them look as if they're performing as well as other brands. So that's a really good point. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes the racer has to say no to a potential sponsorship. So as we're closing this session here, we'll go Brian, Chris, and then Michael again. Any last words? We have racers on the call who are looking for wheel and tire sponsors. Any last words of advice?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on what Michael said. Don't send out the same email. Don't send out the same proposal to everyone. This is a very small industry. We all know each other. And if you burn somebody, we all know about it. You're not going to get picked up by somebody else. If you send out a generic proposal that shows you've put no, research or investment into what you're asking for, it's not going to get a response. So I think that's very important. And just, I'm going to say it again, treat it like a business, be professional. If you're looking to pick up big sponsors, don't be posting goofy stuff on your personal Instagram. We're all going to see it, and we don't want you representing our brand.
Yeah. You're a brand ambassador. You're representing that brand with everything you do.
That's
and
right.
as Matt Martellio says, is you are what they Google. Once it's online, it is forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And make sure you search your name on Google so you know what it says before everybody else finds it.
It scares me sometimes searching my name.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, any last words of advice?
Yeah, I'll echo those sentiments. You're applying for a job. You're applying to be a marketer of our brand, and it should be direct. It should be personalized to the brand. Your communication should be specific, and if you want to build lasting relationships and long-term sponsorships that actually help you achieve your goals, you may have to take a hit in the first year or two to prove yourself. But if you believe in the brand that you're approaching, which would make it a good brand for you to be affiliated with, then it'll be worth it because you'll deliver the value. So don't be scared to believe in yourself and step out. And we have so many people to measure from. We don't know all of your backstory initially. So sometimes it's a reach for us at a level that doesn't feel relative to you or valuable enough to you, but you'll deliver enough value that down the road it will be worth it.
That's a really good point. And I like the point where you said it's like you're applying for a job. Your resume is your application. You want to represent well because you're going to represent the brand. Real quick, Michael, any last words? And then we're going to head over to the last session, which is networking and meeting new sponsors.
Yeah, a couple things that I'll build on from what both Brian and Chris have said. You know, Brian mentioned something that's a real big deal for us. Always include in your proposal, what can you do for us other than the race? You know, it might be a 12 race series. Well, that's only 12 days, 24 days out of a, you know, 6 or 8 month period. What are you doing for me in between there? Can you show up at one of my dealers? You know, can we use your truck in another event booth? What else can you do? And then demonstrate what you've done for other sponsors. If you've participated in any of these other affiliate programs, or you've got anything where you can actually demonstrate results, that's a huge thing to include in your proposals. The other thing that you guys both mentioned, we want people who are good sportsmen, who are high character. They've got a positive public persona, and that's a genuine one. That if you go ask other racers in their series, that this guy's somebody who will help you when your truck's broke in the pit, you know, and he's not taking advantage of other people or that kind of thing. Those are big deals to make sure that you're dealing with good people, because that's just as important as whatever results they put up in the track, is that they're well liked and well received in that racing community, because that lends credibility to their voice when we put our name on their vehicle. So those are all really important things I think that people need to include in their deck and in how they present themselves.
Awesome. Awesome, guys. That was great. That was a good session. That was the first time we did that one, and I'm going to do that one again, because I think that's very valuable. And it is one of the biggest expenses of racing at the team level. So Tony, stay on the line. George is giving me a hand up.
I just wanted to say thank you to all of these different partners of the Dirt Life Show. You guys do a fantastic job with everything, and I want to take this time to appreciate you guys for all the support that you've given us.
Thank you if you heard that. Tony, stay on. We
Thanks,
have
Alex.
now, next up, let's see. We have Catherine Reinhardt, who I've known quite a while. She's now with Hemmings, Executive Vice President of Marketing for Hemmings. David Morton from Fifth Third Bank, who runs their motorsports program. And Travis Clark, who, guys, he's the Executive Vice President of Action Sports and Olympics for Wasserman Media. So this session is about networking. And and then Tony, I'm going to hand it over to a little story first. And this is a story about networking. In 2005, when I was with Championship Off-Road Racing, Jim Baldwin had acquired the series from, he acquired the series, and then he got the logo and all the livery, and we didn't like the logo. We wanted a new logo, something that was a little bit more modern and looked cool. So there was this young graphic artist over at an agency called The Family who created a logo for us. And it was phenomenal. I mean, it was a great logo. If you guys remember Core, the look changed the image of that series, and it helped brand that series and make it cool. It made it relevant. And that was a logo done by a young graphic artist at the time named Travis Clark. Well, now let's fast forward 18 years. Travis now is one of the senior executives at Wasserman Media. He's executive vice president. By staying in touch with Travis through these years, that's networking. I now know Travis. I knew him 18 years ago. I met him 18 years ago, kept in touch with him, liked his work, and now we're friends. And so I see him at King of the Hammers all the time. We're going to see him in Supercross tonight. Travis, thanks for joining and talk about networking. Holy moly, it's been almost 20 years. What advice do you have on networking?
Well, I got to correct one error in your beautiful intro there. By no means did I design that logo. We have much smarter and more talented people, but I think you asked if I knew someone there who could do it, and I said absolutely. We had a great young graphic designer, Marcus, who mocked that up. I may have helped him a little bit. Happen.
Thank you.
But I'm not that talented. I wish I was. I mean, networking, and we've known each other a long time, and it really. You hear the expression, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and that really is true, especially in the sports community, which is a pretty tight-knit community of folks. Really, when you kind of cut through it and get to the core of it, there's a handful of people in each industry who are really kind of movers and shakers, and they may not always be with one brand, but oftentimes they'll end up in another brand. So it's all about staying connected and saying hi and being friendly, and not just always calling for deals, but just checking in and seeing how things are going, and seeing people at events like you and I at Supercross later tonight and other things, and making sure you continue to connect and stay front and center and just, enjoy people's company and enjoy getting to know people. I think that's really how you go far in this space.
That's true. And Tony, you and I kind of same thing. We started bouncing into each other, I think, probably at SEMA, what, 15 years ago, I'm guessing, is through the years.
No, you've already forgotten me and our relationship and our starting, which was core as well. If you remember, we were the official filter. I say we, K&N was the official filter of core back in those days. And you had the hard job of keeping me involved in core and the new business model and following that piece around. So it was around the same time. I didn't believe in you. I didn't think you were a big deal. And then you proved me wrong really quick.
Only took 20 years.
Yeah, pretty close to it. But yes, I think you're right. Around SEMA time and some of the career changes and things kind of moved on. And we became, and then I think we realized, and that goes on to the networking piece. That was our intro. But I think that you and I spent some good amount of time understanding each other and having, again, some of the same woes and thoughts and alliances when it came to motorsports and the industry as a whole. And that's when I bought your first book on that. And then we went from there.
So the reason why I brought that up is because part of networking, and I've learned over the years, I've had a 30-year career since leaving school a long time ago. And I can tell you over the past 30 years, I've learned that it's not the senior people that you meet at the beginning of your career who will help you make your career happen. It's the junior people who you meet at the beginning of your career who you will rise with as your career progresses. So everybody else wants to meet the president or the CEO and the top this, the top that, the champion. Those aren't often the people who are going to help you out in the long run because they're going to be retired and they've moved on. The people who are going to grow with you in your career and in your racing are the younger people, the people at the track, those who are providing support. And networking starts, in my opinion, and I've learned this now in hindsight. I didn't know it then because, yes, I was calling all the big name people back in the day, trying to get to know them. But I realized 30 years later that it's the young people that you grow your career with who can help make it happen. And so it's okay to start and get to know people who are smart and active and who really are the movers and the shakers in an industry. And one place to do that, I mentioned SEMA because Tony, we always bump into each other at SEMA. SEMA is a place where a lot of racers will hand out decks or proposals or something they think is a combination, and they look for sponsorship. And that is not the place to do so. Trade shows and events are not the place to hand out marketing material to the executives and the professionals there who are working the event in order to promote their brand. They're trying to sell to their retailers and their vendors and to create more demand for the product. They're not there for you to sell them. However, you can use events to get to know them, like a day or two before SEMA or a day or two after, as they're setting up their booth or they're breaking it down, or even at a race. You go before the race when trucks are still loading and moving in. That's a great way to meet people, and afterwards hanging out. I think I probably had more beer and more drinks and dinner with colleagues now who became friends over the years because I got to know them at an event, not at the actual event during the racing, but before the event, at a pre-party, or afterwards in a celebration in the pits. And so networking comes at the grassroots level. It's at the one-on-one face person level. You want to meet people one-on-one, face-to-face. Not over, I know we're doing this as a Zoom call and this is all electronic now. It's a little bit different. It's harder to get to know someone through a call like this, but we got a lot of people on one call, which is really nice. But still, it won't be until tonight when we're at an event, sitting at an event, having beer and watching the event happen. That's when the real networking takes place. So are all the panelists up? Because these are some great networkers. These are people who I see at events all the time and who we love hanging out. Let's start with David, who I just saw. David Morton was at PRI most recently, and he and I were hanging out. Where is David? He's up there.
I'm here.
Hey, there he is. David, what advice do you have for racers who are trying to meet brands and people like yourself? You invited me to a cocktail party at PRI, spent a lot of time there. That was really fun. What else are good ways to get to know people?
Well, you've kind of started headed down a path that I firmly believe in, and that's that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes multiple touch points. You really have to focus on the relationship first. And something that I always do is I really work hard at figuring out how I can get a win for somebody before I make an ask of somebody. And I think that's really important. And you gotta understand, you gotta put yourself in their shoes and understand maybe what some of the challenges that they have and how you can add value instead of just making requests of them. So that's kind of the first thing I would say. And then I would also say you gotta have a plan. You can't just do this as a shotgun approach. It's got to be more of a rifle approach, and do your homework up front. Be intentional about how you go about networking, and you'll be much more efficient with your time if you do that. And I've certainly seen that over and over again. And sometimes you're very intentional about it, and sometimes networking happens in ways that are unexpected. I've got a good friend who's owner of a technology company up in New Jersey, who ended up running into a driver on the streets of Vegas, and everybody had logos, shirts on. So that ended up becoming he ended up sponsoring this driver who's now a NASCAR Cup driver full time, and it all started on Vegas. So my point there is be intentional about it, but also be open to uncovering relationships maybe in unexpected places. And whether you're intentional or it's sort of more by chance, you got to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to. You can't go into a room and hide. I mean, you got to really put your best foot forward, and you got to be open to conversations with people. And to your point, they may not ultimately be the person that's gonna give you, that has the authority to bring you on and as a and to sponsor them, but you can help open doors to other people if you build that rapport up front.
That's a really good point, is you meet somebody through somebody else. It's a really good point. And in fact, most of the relationships I think I've met through a mutual friend who made an introduction. Catherine, are you on the line? Is Catherine up?
I'm here.
There she is. Yep. So Catherine and I know a lot of people in common. And at first we started bumping into each other at events. And now I think every single racing event that I go to, Catherine is there. Now you're with Hemmings. How has it changed? Has anything changed now that you're on that side of the business?
No, a lot of it's still the same. I love what David just said about being open to conversations in rooms. I call myself a center person room. There are people that go to rooms and they're what I call corner people. They hang out in the corner and they just hope that somebody comes up to them and says hello. I'm a center person room. I want to walk up to people that I don't know, introduce myself, give them a compliment, start a conversation, and just see where our paths can connect. And I think that's important because that's how you find common interests, and that's where you find opportunities. And I think that when you have that opportunity with someone, that's when you better know your pitch and be ready. And it could be a pitch for yourself. And honestly, it could be a pitch for your friend. When you guys talk about meeting new people and networking and finding introductions, that introduction you may have right now may not be for you, but maybe for someone else. And being able to connect those dots for people, I think is so valuable and makes you an authentic person. And I loved when Vaughn said earlier, be your authentic self and have genuine connections with brands. This is how you do it. You go to events that you're not familiar with. Alex, you talk about going to events. I go to everything I possibly can. If it's a trail ride, if it's a car show, if it's a race, whether I know somebody or don't, I'm willing to just put myself out there and go find people and introduce myself at new events. And I think that's really important.
And you were also just recently in Washington representing, the racing industry. For those who don't know, and maybe you can explain what you do with Hemmings, but you're also a board member at SEMA. So SEMA had a bunch of representatives go to Washington to help promote the RPM Act, and you were one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people may or may not know, but our industry is under attack by the government. They do not see what we do as a hobby as helping the environment, even though some of the vehicles we produce actually create lesser emissions than OEM vehicles. But what's really important about that is our collective voice. And so when we go to Washington, D.C., we are actively lobbying the Hill to make sure that all of you have the ability to go race your vehicles, because the government doesn't think you should be able to do that. And that's a concern for us. And so that's why SEMA, as an association, we pay dues to, we all volunteer to go to Washington, D.C. to help support that and make sure that our collective voices are heard and that we have the right to do our hobby. And so, yeah, being on the board is great because we get to travel around to a lot of events. We get to see people like Alex at PRI. SEMA owns PRI, but it's also another facet for us to network and communicate.
Right on. Thank you. And then Travis, I don't think anybody out there has sold more sponsorships than you. You blow everybody. You take everything I've sold in sponsorships and everybody I know who sells sponsorships, and you've probably doubled or tripled that. How do you meet new sponsors? You're the guy here that makes all the money, that has made more money for more teams and racers, both Olympics, action sports. We have a lot of racers on the call, and they're struggling to try to find and meet people with money who might sponsor their program. What tips and advice do you have for them to meet new sponsors? You're muted.
Sorry, I have kids playing in the background if you can't hear them. Joys of being from home on a Saturday.
It's all good. It's all good.
There's been a lot of great points raised so far. And, one of the things I really like about SEMA is, yeah, you're right. I don't go there, hawking out proposals and trying to close deals. I'm mostly going there to see what brands are doing what are they activating? What products are they pushing? What new marketing initiatives do they have? As someone who sells sponsorships, I try and think like a marketer. If I'm that brand and I'm pitching a certain property or athlete, what could value from a marketing perspective could they offer? And I try and think of myself more as a marketer than anything. And so I really take opportunities like SEMA and other events to not, pitch, but more learn and educate myself on what's the industry doing, what direction is the industry going, are there trends emerging, are there things emerging that I should be paying attention to that we should be, trying to include in our pitches or our decks. And then like you were talking about, that's also the opportunity to get to know people. Take people to dinner, meet people for drinks, take people to, we have some teams in Vegas, meet the drivers, see the shops, to give them the facility. And it's not a hard pitch. It's more just building the relationships, educating ourselves, and really trying to understand what's going on and how can we, ride those new trends and ride those new opportunities to successful partnerships. Partnerships are hard, you have to really understand and really understand up front, what are the goals and objectives of this sponsorship or this partnership? Because if I'm trying to ramrod some deal down, it's going to be over at the end of the year before we know it. And selling sponsorships, you guys know, it's hard. And we like to really try and structure our partnerships in a way that they're set up for success. We understand what the goals and objectives are. We're aligned on our marketing vision. And we can ride those, into multi-year deals that last a lot longer than just trying to force a square peg in a round hole just because we need a few dollars.
Do you use the same approach for the different series that you've been involved with? Like, does the Olympics versus, let's say, motocross versus off-road, do you use the same approach to meet brands in those different series? Or
to a certain degree, yeah. It's all the same kind of tools, just applied in different settings, right? So when I go to Winter X Games to talk about our snow athletes and snow properties, we're not there pitching at X Games. We're there to meet, to entertain, to educate. Same for Supercross. Anaheim 1's tonight. It's our Daytona 500. It's the biggest event of the year, and we have a couple suites, and we're just entertaining and hosting and getting to know everyone, or bring together some of the partnerships we've done for the year, kick them off right. So really, same tools, just applied in different settings and stuff. And again, I think strength as a salesperson is just thinking like a marketer, and I really try and study the current trends and what's going on. And I always say, we're an extension of your marketing department. Whatever brand we're talking to or working with, we're an extension of your marketing department. And we have to think like that. The days of just, putting the logo on a car, like the one behind you, and, sitting back, those are over. We have to be proactive. We have to be aggressive, and we have to really be an extension of the brand and represent the brand in the ways that they're looking to be represented.
Amen. Yes. We say that a lot. Tony, you've been on both sides now. You were the one who was approached for a long time, a couple decades while you were with K&N. Now you're with RTR, Von Gitten's program. What are your tips and tricks for networking and meeting new people?
Well, I'll let you know when I figure it out on the RTR side. But what I figured out so far is, going to the networking, and what I think what I've heard through each person so far in the networking section is really identify where you can add value, because any kind of relationship doesn't become fruitful unless you can add value. And that goes for anything in life, right? That can be family, that can be friends, but that can also be business as well. And that value doesn't necessarily have to relate to sales, but it could just be a good sounding board, and echoing your responses or your statement earlier of going, it's the people that are, I think, on the same level as you, in down in the lower ranks, not necessarily a CEO when you're starting out in this world, in this category, that really are more effective, because it's really two brains in one thinking and can work off of each other. Alex, I think you and I have a perfect example of what that is. And I'm sure I have with other people, you have with other people, but it's something that you and I get on conversations here every couple of weeks, and we talk about the random stuff, and we're able to bounce that stuff off of each other. And we've built a relationship off of that networking and those pieces. And it came from a professional point for, I don't know, a dozen or so years, and became into a personal one. And I think it's moved on. I think there's a half a dozen or so people on this list of panelists today that I have those relationships with, and they all came from something that was, hey, we're both trying to reach something common. And it's like, hey, how can I add to him to add value to what he's working on? And he adds value to what I'm working on. That goes for, again, on a personal or a professional level.
And a lot of it is,
and I think they can do that.
Go ahead, Tony.
I think a lot of that has to do with identifying, again, where your value is at and what you can give to them and what they can give to you. And it's not a using or abusing anybody. It's really about going like, how can I help them achieve their goals while they help me achieve mine?
Yeah, that makes sense. And then what I was going to say is a lot of it is just showing up in the first place. George reminded me about this is you have to be there in person to meet somebody. And I can tell you from experience, when I first started out a couple decades ago, probably 90% of my efforts seemed futile at the time. I would go to events, I'd try to meet people and walk away empty-handed. And it was very disappointing. And then you meet one person after a year or two. And then after a couple of more years, you meet another person, then you meet another. And then suddenly after a career or after several years of doing this, you start to know people. But it does start with that first meeting, and you have to be there in order to meet that person. So you actually have to show up at the events and take the time to do so. It's hard to network if you're not there physically in person. David, I think you and I got to know each other literally through trade shows. I'm pretty sure at every PRI, every SEMA, you're always there. You also have a cocktail party after PRI where you're putting other people together. And I love that event because I can network with others. What are some other great ways that racers can meet brands?
Well, certainly those are all obvious ways, but what I would recommend is doing your research to understand the brands that you're targeting and figure out where are opportunities to intersect with those brands, maybe outside of at races or at trade shows. So, for example, if there's a brand that you think would be a good potential sponsor in your general community, and they're passionate about supporting homeless shelters, go volunteer at the homeless shelters. Be out there with them and showing. And one, it helps demonstrate your personal brand and the values that you have. And two, it puts you in a setting that's, I think, much more conducive to building a personal relationship, because it's not in an office someplace where everybody's got their guards up. So if you can figure out places to be that those companies are really passionate about, that have provide the ability to intersect with them there, I think those are ways to really get some great wins. And as you were kind of hitting on before, to me, it's all about repetition. And so you can't it's not a one and done. You can't just show up and volunteer once, for example, and expect to get something out of it. You got to keep doing it over and over again, and then that's when you'll start to see some momentum down the road.
Right on. That's a really good point, is to meet them in a non-race environment and to get to know them socially through non-racing. That's a much better way to get to know somebody personally, because then they know you're not trying to sell them anything. You're just forming a relationship. Catherine, let's go to you, because you go to a lot of events and you're usually in the center of the room, like you said. What are some of the better events that you think racers should go to, and where they can meet more sponsors? Obviously, you know, the beginning race of every season, whether it's Supercross or Daytona or NHRA, that first race is where all the marketing directors are. So that's usually a pretty good one. And usually when Super Bowl comes into town, all the brands that sponsor Super Bowl, they fill the hotels, they fill the restaurants. So when an event comes into town, it's good to kind of hang out at the event beforehand, and certain locations. What are good ways to meet people at these places?
You know, I'd even take it a step backwards. I bet everybody on this call has a sponsor in mind right now that they want to go meet, right? How are you going to do that? You could go to the race, sure, but you could also use social media platforms to go find who these people are. Yeah. One of the things that I used to do when I was racing is I would actually go and Google these people. I would find out everything I could about them. I'd find their social media platforms, just like what David was saying. I find out what they're interested in, and a step away from stalking them, I would go make sure that I had something in common with these people that I could now relate to them on. I would go to events that they would be at. And yeah, you can find some of the events, you could kind of, you know, guess where they're going to be. But I would also ask for introduction. If I knew somebody that had a common friend with this person, I would say, hey, could you introduce me? Don't just give me their email or their phone number and then let me just cold call them. That doesn't work. But introduce me, tell them that you know me and that I'm a good person and that they should have interest in sponsoring me. Even when I was racing Rebel last year, I was still having to go find sponsors. And the one thing that I would do is go and research them. Don't just show up and introduce yourself. Know about who they are. Know what they look like. Google these people because they exist and they will appreciate the fact that you did that homework. And so go to these events with intention and purpose and know what you're going to ask them, and ask a lot of questions. Don't just go up and say, don't you know who I am? Ask questions. I don't know who said it earlier on one of the other panels, but you know, have interest in what they're doing and how that you can help their business. And going to these events, asking those purposeful questions is really going to make your connection even stronger when you do meet.
Nice. Nice. So Travis, you go to more events, I think, than the rest of us combined. Are you going to events?
My wife loves that.
Yeah. Are you going to represent your teams and your riders, or are you looking for more sponsors, or do you both?
It depends on the events or whatnot. Oftentimes it is, you know, helping our athletes. You know, I've done everything from hold umbrellas at motocross races in the rain, walking Reed back to the podium, to cleaning goggles and boots, to, you know, feeding water bottles to Bryce and Annie in the middle of the desert, and you know, being a board caddy at surf events. So kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to helping the athletes. But at this point, more of my career, it's making sure some of our other agents are doing their jobs and taking care of their athletes. But a lot of it is sponsorship driven, because we either have done deals and we want to make sure they're being executed correctly, or we're entertaining folks at events, or are just, you know, really there to learn and see. It might be a new event we're getting into. We've recently gotten into the cycling space, and I have a couple athletes have been going to some events like Tour de France last year and others where we're trying to kind of learn the landscape of what's going on and where we potentially could see opportunity. So really, you know, I'm at events now at this point. It's kind of a hybrid of it's my athletes competing. Is it just Wasserman events where we're participating? Is it something we're looking at and taking notes about? But really it's just all about being up to date on what's happening and ensuring that we're seeing the trends, like I've talked about earlier, and seeing the opportunities and where they exist.
And one thing I like is kind of hitting on what you said, and also what Catherine was talking about earlier, is when you're going to events, they don't have to be just the big events. You can go to small local events and you can find representatives of the company at those events, and often they're salespeople. I got to know let's say Ben Dolan at BP Fuels through Bruce Hendel at BP Fuels. Bruce is the salesman who introduced me to the marketing person. Sometimes you can meet marketing people through sales. Salesmen want to make more money and sell more product for the brand. And how do you do that? You do that through good marketing. So salesmen have a strong incentive to do things that work. If your race program is truly going to be an asset to a company where you can provide value and enhance the brand and increase sales and maybe elevate brand level and equity levels, well, salesmen will help you meet the right people in the company. So try to get to know the regional or the local people to get to know the national people, use sales to get to know marketing. As Catherine was saying, ask for the referral, ask for others. I heard someone say something there.
Alex, it's a great point you raised, because one of the things I'm a big believer in, especially with our teams and properties, is hosting sponsorship summits each year. And the goal right there is just to get everyone in the room and outline what the team's doing for the year, what we did the previous year, but also get the brands talking. Where can there be opportunities where the brands can generate some business just because they're sitting in the same room? We're talking about plans. Where does some of the business intersects that could lead to sales? Because if we can generate sales as a byproduct of this partnership, that's just going to let this partnership renewed much easier and potentially even grow into the future.
Travis, that's a great point. I'm going to end on that as well, because every big team and every large successful team that I know, without exception, they do their own sponsorship summits as well. They put their sponsors together one day out of the year, and they usually go over what their plan is for the following year. And then they encourage those sponsors to work together. And I know, because I've spoken at many of these to represent the series that I was with at the time, but the best racers out there have their own sponsorship summits, and it's with their own sponsors. They're not, and they can invite new sponsors. Very few usually go to the sponsor summit of a team, but it's the brand, all the brands coming together to meet each other and to find ways to work together. And then one brand might say, oh, guess what? I have an idea. This other company might fit in well with this. Tony, you said that once, and I think it was the Mag flashlight company when we had a sponsor summit. You said, oh, you know what? Maglite needs to be here. I'm pretty sure that was
Actually, that's a great example. I forgot all about that, but Maglite was one of the companies that were really pursuing the category. And I think theirs was more about doing a professional custom line of products for other businesses. That was becoming one of their expanding things. And we talked about inviting them to the sponsor summit, even they weren't a partner yet, and kind of showing them some of the pieces. So yeah, that was definitely a great success piece on that.
You meet one brand.
I'm really excited, Alex, because Nate finally said yes to one of my proposals, who's lurking on this call, and now he gets to come to one of our sponsorship summits. So
are we talking about Nate Hunt, BF Goodrich?
We are. A little shout out to my boy Nate out there.
He's on the call, huh? He wouldn't join the tire panel, but he'll listen in.
He's always lurking.
Yeah, he's great. Hey, listen, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating in this. We went really fast. I tried a new format this time around with 6 30-minute sessions instead of 6 one-hour sessions, which we did last year. It was a little long. I think next year we'll probably do 45-minute sessions, but tell me what you think. Tammy posted a link to feedback, so you can tell us what we need to do next time. What did you like? What you didn't like? Who do we invite back? What should we expand on more? There's a survey link. It is in the comments. She's saying, I can't see that very well, but it helps us, and it helps us determine what's more value to you. I try to keep these summits less than the cost of a single tire. So hopefully it was valuable and worthwhile. And in the future, as everybody knows, if someone cannot afford these summits, send me an email. We'll send you a complimentary pass. You need to learn this stuff. If you can't afford it, thank you. It helps all of us. It helps us grow and it helps us continue doing these summits. We'll probably do an off-road summit next. We're starting to plan it now, so get ready. That's big on the horizon. And for those of you who are at Supercross tonight, look us up. Travis, I'm going to swing by. Tell me what suite you're in. We'll be in suite number 23. Looking forward to it. And Jesse, are you still on the line? Is he still here? I'm not sure if he is. He might be here somewhere.
You're locked in the building.
We're locked in this building.
I'm here, and thanks, Alex, for the opportunity to host, and everybody else for the great learning today. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you guys next year. Take care.
Thanks, Alex.